We are back with episode 2 of season 4 of We Do a Little Pod, and we have a massive announcement to make. Season 4 is officially powered by Arbitrum, and our content will be redistributed across Rug Radio and Decrypt's platforms. We've said no to quite a few sponsorship opportunities because none of them felt like the right fit until now. Annie and I have been massive fans of Arbitrum since they launched, and both of us invested in Offchain Labs Series B back in 2021. This is a full circle moment for us, and we couldn't be happier to partner with Arbitrum for this season. If you've never felt the frictionless transactions at lightning speeds on the world's most decentralized L2, what are you waiting for? Head on over to portal.arbitrum.io to check out their growing ecosystem where you can explore 600 plus apps and even participate in missions to earn points. Without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. In this episode, we are joined by AJ Warner, the Chief Strategy Officer of Offchain Labs, who are the main contributors to the Arbitrum ecosystem. AJ is a gigabrain Chad who joined the Offchain Labs team in November 2020 and has been their CSO since January 2022. We dive into AJ's life in the legal industry, his crypto origin story, how he joined Offchain Labs, the technical and ideological differences between Arbitrum and other scaling solutions, how the scaling solution business model works at all, big blockers for builders, investors in the crypto space, and so much more. As always, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Andy, D's, and guests may be invested in companies or tokens talked about on this podcast.
This is Andy. Yeah, I'm D's.
GM, we're back again with another episode of We Do a Little Pod. This time we are joined by our good friend AJ Warner, Chief Strategy Officer at Offchain Labs. AJ, it's a cold day out here in New York. Appreciate you taking the time to come hang out with us. How are you doing?
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's definitely cold, but growing up in Toronto,
You're kind of used to it.
I'm embracing it. Yeah.
Yeah, we took a approach this season where we want to talk to more builders. We want to talk to more people behind the scenes who are doing important stuff to push us forward. You know, we're kind of known for doing a little heavy on the artist side or the art side. So this season, it's like, I want to talk to a bunch of our builder friends, and Offchain Labs, Arbitrum, both investors. We're both people who've been following you for a while, and it just felt like a no-brainer to get to sit down with you guys.
Yeah, excited to share. We've got a lot to talk about.
How did you get into Offchain Labs? Like, the story behind joining the Offchain Labs team? And
yeah, so I'll start with the journey into crypto, and then it segues pretty nicely into Offchain Labs. So graduated college in 2013, and Steven, who's the co-founder and CEO at Offchain Labs, we were in the same class. Nice. I went to do a JD MBA at NYU. He went to Princeton. He did his PhD in cryptography. Funny story about all the stuff he used to do before Arbitrum, but anyways, 2013, 2014, nobody of our friendship circle cared about crypto at all.
No.
Right? So like we were pretty good friends. Like we weren't best friends, but this was like our common thing. And when I was in law school, I got really into this space. You guys might remember Charlie Shrem.
Yes.
Remember Charlie Shrem? Yeah. He was like the guy who got arrested for like selling Bitcoin on like Silk Road. Mm-hmm. I got like super down a rabbit hole on like a class in law school on like Bitcoin policy. And this is like 2014. It's like, why are we talking about Bitcoin policy? It's like not a thing, but like I was loving it. And I got down this rabbit hole of like, wow, this guy was like the perfect character if you're like the FBI to just like throw the book at. Cause like he was so like hateable if you're like the FBI. Like, I'll give you one example. It was like hilarious. Like he was under house arrest and he couldn't go to conferences and talk. And like he sent a robot with like an iPad on his face to give like a keynote speaker address, and then like threw the book at him again, right? Like I was interviewing his lawyers and everything. So I was going like super deep down in this space. And Steven and I were like, kind of degenning trading and like, name coin, peer coin, if you remember those days. And like, so anyways, that's like me in 2014, 2015, like law school. Steven's doing his thing where he's actually trying to change the world with cryptography, and I'm degenning, right?
Yeah, someone had to do it.
So exactly, right? The users, right? So 2017 rolls around. Steven and I are like at a deli, and he's like, I think I hit something with this thing called Arbitrum that we're building, but like it's me and like Ed, who's now a co-founder, who was a professor at Princeton, and Harry, the other co-founder, was the other PhD student. They're like, where do we go from here, right? So I'm like, all right, well, we gotta get venture funding. Let me help you with that. Let me start thinking about how I can help you. Obviously, they did most of the lift. Let me get my law firm where I'm working now. I'm a real estate lawyer. Like, I'm literally doing nothing in crypto.
Yeah.
I'm DJing at night, but during the day, I'm a real estate lawyer. I'm like, let me advocate to my law firm to take you. Like, Ed's background will probably get you in the door. So I started helping them. We get them work set up as like a company, help them with their seed round. And then like, I'm just like there as like an advisor. Like they're just coding. It's 3 guys coding, right? Ed left. He gave up his tenure at Princeton. So Ed's like, and he was before that like the CTO at the White House. Like, so he just like went down this rabbit hole of like gonna do a startup as like a third career basically, which is like really crazy.
Super rare.
Yeah, super rare. Right?
I mean, just let alone saying he gave up his tenure at Princeton. It's like,
Exactly, right?
You got to feel pretty fucking confident.
Yeah, so we're 28 years into Ed's Princeton career, and like he just finished a stint at the White House as Obama's deputy CTO, and he's like, "All right, Siege Stage Company, let's go!" Right? So the 3 of them are going, and I'm like this guy working with them. Like I almost joined full time, but I'm like I have nothing to do. Like I'll literally do nothing for 3 years except give T-shirts out at a booth, right? Because like there's no business development, there's nothing, right?
It's like they have to build.
There's no business development.
Exactly. There's nothing to do. Like there's literally nothing to do. So I'm like helping them, thinking about like how to position. I'm on the sidelines, right? And so fast forward now to 2020, COVID. Steven and I were at a mutual friend's wedding, and he's like, "All right, we're launching on testnet now. It's now or never. Are you in or are you out?" So this is a funny background, and I always say that if it wasn't for this background, I'm not so sure I would have said yes, because like I had a very comfortable thing going. I was like really doing well in like my real estate career at the time, and I took a huge pay cut like to go down this rabbit hole.
Go down in a startup.
Yeah, like it's just like they didn't have that much money. It was Siege Stage company. They invested they only raised $3 million at the time, right? But I'll tell you what happened. So my daughter was born like a week before this wedding, and I took like 2 weeks of paternity leave, and the partner I was working with was like, "I know you're on paternity leave, but it'd be great for your career if you can like really, And I love that partner, by the way. Nothing bad to say about him. But I worked in like 3 days, like 55 hours on like, this is like day 7 to 10 of like my daughter's
on
my paternity leave.
And so I'm sure your wife like wants to murder you.
Right, exactly. Like she's ready to
murder your
she's
job.
ready to like kill me. She's like, you're going to bed at like 6 a.m. and you're like, I need you by 10 a.m. It's like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And it's COVID. And there's just like a lot. It's like Steven's like, all right, it's now or never. And I'm just like, all right, let's just do it. And I feel like I never would. I don't know if I would have said yes if it wasn't all of these like.
Can you work 55 hours
Like
in 3 days?
things happen. And by the way, like working at Offchain Labs has not been easy. Like, it's been a ton of work too. And like, I love it. Like I would never change anything in the world, but like, it was just at that confluence of like, I got to get out of this. I need to be my own person. I need to craft my own path, because like, I don't mind working hard, but I need a little bit more control. You know what I mean? I need control of my destiny, and I need to feel like I'm contributing something that I really like. I liked real estate. It was interesting. I always say, I had peers that were better than me because they cared more than I did, right? Like I just had different trading balances of like life, crypto degenning. Like it's just like, it wasn't.
When crypto degen's a variable in the equation,
It's really hard.
it gets all out of whack. You're like
It's
making
very hard to be good at degenning crypto and also like have anything else going on in your life.
Yeah.
like be
yeah,
good
exactly.
at your day job while also being in the
So
family.
the craziest thing is like, I gave up crypto degenning when I joined the industry.
Yeah.
Like I don't have time anymore. And it's like, it gets like weird. Like if I degen, it's like, people are tracking my wallets, like what's going on and stuff. So like I don't
It's too
really,
weird.
It's too weird. So like I don't degen anymore basically. I'll invest in things that I like, but I don't like, shitcoin trade anymore.
Yeah, you're not just like on a VPN on a shitty exchange.
Exactly.
Like,
It's not happening anymore.
oh man,
but,
this might be the next time.
so that was like my journey into Offchain. And
And so when in 2020 was this?
so this is like September. And then I think
So
like
it's post like COVID crash.
COVID crash post. Oh my God, that was a day.
Yeah, so I was working at MakerDAO during that time.
Oh, nice.
And so that was like literally it's happening to my protocol, and I'm like, holy fuck, I
it
might
over?
lose my job. It might all be over.
Like, but like when I say like I was crypto DJing, and like, again, not financial advice, no one should do this. Outside of like my work 401k, I was like 98% all in.
oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
Like
we all
you know what I mean? Like I'm saying, like I don't know what your audience feels like. I feel like people don't realize like what it. I'm like all in. Like
Yeah.
monthly payments for my salary. It's like, oh my God, all right, which coin do I trade if I have like a unexpected like
Did you have a thing
expense?
with your wife where it was like understood that, you know, in our house at least, my wife was saving money for a house down payment, and then my money was not going toward a house down payment. It was all going into crypto. And there was this idea that like if my shit did go to zero, like at least she had enough for the house down payment.
Okay, so that's a good one. So we didn't have that. Like my wife had a good job at the time. She actually lost her job in COVID. So like she lost her job.
And you joined the start.
She lost her job because it was working for a retail company that just shut down North America operations during COVID.
Was she a lawyer as well?
No,
or?
she's an accountant. She was like the head of like, you ever heard of George Jensen? It's like a house goods company. It's like Danish.
Okay.
Right. So she was the head of like their North American accounting department. And they're just like, we're closing our New York retail store and like, we're just going to get rid of the accounting function in New York. So that was a month after I quit my job. So like our household income went down like 80%, basically. Right. So that was like a crazy time. But you know what? I'll give her credit. She just had conviction that I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, she's like, we'll figure this out. Like, you know, I don't know. But that March day, I still remember. I was just like, I actually remember what I was doing. It was like the craziest like confluence of things. So I was still a real estate lawyer. I was representing, it sounds like an absurd sentence. Like in 100 years, if I would ever listen to this, I'd be like, what? One of the biggest New York hotels was like, okay, we got to negotiate with the city to get homeless people in here because we're not going to be able to make our loan payments. So they wanted to turn a 5-star hotel in Midtown into a homeless shelter for people, not a homeless shelter, like COVID quarantine.
relief.
Sorry, COVID quarantine center.
Yeah.
And like, they're like,
And get a payment from the city.
and get payments from the cities for it. I'm just like, wow, like you are like going to like destroy this like incredible brand of this hotel, but sure, right? So I'm like negotiating that, and like my net worth is going to zero, and like simultaneously, I'm like, the world is apocalyptic right now, right? Like the world is like literally
5-star hotel turning
like,
into a
literally exactly right. Like they're like, yeah, just give us whatever we can get, and I'm just like, I don't know what's happening in this world, but yeah, I remember you make your dad. I'm sure you're probably terrified, right?
Yeah,
like,
it was crazy. But
it was a
all right.
crazy
So that's
time.
that's September 2020.
So the wedding was in
joined
September.
Offchain.
I probably started in November. Just like quit, like, you know, take 2 weeks, whatever. You know?
And was your role then CSO or
No, so I was like the first we had like it's still a very engineering heavy culture. There was like an operations manager who was all internal function. Like he did paid bills, HR, recruiting, like health insurance. Like he's awesome, Daniel. He's like still with us. Like that was his function, right? And like order swag. And I was like the first engineer who was like not focused on internal stuff. So my title was like director of strategy and partnerships, but it literally went from everything from we got to do a fundraise because we need money. How should we think about launching a test net? Which partners should we be working with? You know, how should we think about our event strategy? We had no marketing people. Like all of these different things was sort of where I was. Fundraising was at the top of the list because we really needed money. And I remember my first day, we met with like an investor who's actually on our cap table. I don't know if he'd want me to say, so I'm not going to say who it was, but drilled me.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. I'm like, Steven was like, all right, it's his first day. This is our guy. And this guy's like, I don't know if it was like an intentional hazing or if it was like a diligence thing, but he just like wanted my go-to-market strategy. How am I going to do this? Like at the time,
It's your
like,
first day.
Literally first day. We're like 4 hours in.
Deer in the headlights.
I don't have a deck. I don't have a go-to-market strategy. I barely know anything beyond like yield farming on Curve right now. Like, like let's figure this all out, right? But grilling me, and then we got like no term sheet, and I'm like calling Steve. I'm like, look, I'm sorry. I know it's my first day. I hope I didn't screw this up. He's like, dude, it's your first day. Like, if he's the one who's telling us that he's not investing because it's our first day, like, it's probably not the right investor for us, right? Like,
and then they ended up investing.
If that's his empathy, he's actually on the cap table.
Yeah. So,
but
that's funny.
But and I actually love him. He's like one of my favorite people to talk to if I ever need like some guidance. And
do you think that experience like helped at all in some weird way? Like the first day getting grilled by this guy.
I'm like a very neurotic person generally. Like I'll like see everything around like every corner and think everything is like my fault.
Yeah.
So it probably like, and it's a good skill to have in this space because there's so many landmines, right? Like everything in crypto is a landmine, and
Playing Minesweeper.
everybody's like because everything's so financialized. You know what I mean, right? So like allegiances change and like all these different things. So I think it was like a really good first day because it shocked me. It was just like, all right, like this is big leagues, you know, at the time. And it also made me very aware of like the scaling wars, because one of the criticisms we were getting, and you guys are probably obviously familiar with this, it's like not a secret. It's like, all right, how are you guys going to beat OP? Was like everybody. And it was like at the time, nobody cared about Arbitrum. Like OP was like the kingmaker.
Yeah.
And it was like, how do we, and it's just like, it probably pushed me in a direction, like seeing this call. It's like, all right, you need to make sure you understand and get your shit together like fast. So it was probably a good first day, and I still remember it so vividly. I don't even know if he remembers it.
Probably doesn't.
He probably doesn't, but it changed for me a lot. It really did.
So
And how big was the entirety of the company at this point?
7 people.
Okay.
You're right. Yeah. So it's 3 founders. I was probably maybe 8. It was like 3 founders, 3 engineers, the operations guy.
was that the first time that you had to like go out and raise money?
Oh yeah, I've literally no experience. I went on like SlideBean. It's like find a deck for a Series A crypto company and like see like literally like you know what I mean. Like you have no idea what you want to do. I did an MBA, so I had a little bit of experience. But again, my MBA was like even real estate concentration, right? Like I did a real estate finance.
Until you actually go through the process of raising a round, you have
you've
no
done
idea
this,
what
yeah.
it's like to raise a round. You go and they're like, and every person is different too. Like you talk to some people and it's like a very casual conversation. And then you talk to someone else and they're like, exactly how much money and what valuation do you want to raise? And you're like, to be honest, I hadn't really thought about it. How much money do you want to give me?
Right.
And then you learn like, all right, I need to kind of like know these things before I go into these calls. If they ask, I can say it and say it confidently and not say like I'm just like pulling a number out of my ass. And you like learn kind of, it's like a whole song and dance, I feel like.
It is such a song and dance. And the one thing I would say, and like Andy, obviously you have a ton of experience with this, is like there's a FOMO concept here that is like really important to tap into, because like every investor in the space talks to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you are like persona non grata, and it's another lesson in like just don't make enemies, right? Because like if you're persona non grata in one place, like no one's going to take a risk on you because there's enough opportunities in this space. And if people like you, like everybody wants in, and then you can like sort of pick out your strategy as you want. So we kind of went through all of that, where it was like very up and down, where it was like in the beginning it was like super tough, and then it was like, you know, it timed also like nicely with like the bull market of 2021. It's like, all right, let it rain. It was like a complicated time, but yeah, fundraising is really tough. But we were fortunate. We did 2 raises. We did the 20 million in the A round, and then we did 100 million a few months later, right before we launched. Also crazy. Like at the time, like we launched Arbitrum. So like I joined, let's say 8. We were an 11-person company, I think, when we launched Arbitrum. So like we had all this money, and that was great. And like it de-risked, like, you know, if something went wrong. Because also
You have a nice runway.
you also remember this, Andy, because you were the Uniswap proposer. It's like,
Yeah.
we could talk about that. I love
definitely
that.
have to talk
We'll
about it.
definitely talk about
That was a
but
good one.
It was like OP went with a whitelisted, and Arbitrum went open on day one, right? Like anybody can deploy contracts. Better strategy for us at the time because we really needed that. Also, way more risky. Like, who knows what
Who's
goes wrong?
gonna deploy?
Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Not just who knows what's going to deploy.
What
Let's
kind of
just-
scam
Let's say the
or-
thing breaks, right? So, like who knows? It's the first L2 to ever launch in a production environment with anybody being able to deploy. We're like, we don't know what's going to happen. It's like having that comfort of like the fundraise like really helped there. We obviously didn't launch anything that we thought was like irresponsible. We tried to be responsible with it, of course, but
But you still never know.
you still never know. And then like 10 days in, do you guys remember RB9?
Yeah.
RB9, like people like talk about like meme coins, like remember like Bald on Base a few months ago and like all this stuff with like Solana now. And
Yeah.
it's like RB9 hit like $3 billion in 6 hours. Like there were 600,000 ETH that crossed the Arbitrum bridge to buy RB9 in a 6-hour period. It is like, we're talking like next level, right? And like, it was actually a Saturday and I'm Shabbat observant. So I wasn't on my phone or my computer. I turn it on at sundown and I'm just like, wait, what the hell? Why is Arbitrum doing like 267 TPS right now? Like,
Yeah, like,
what is going
on?
on? Like, are you kidding me? This is insane. I look at like the TVL and like one of our investors reaches out to me, calls me, he's like, do you know what's going on? I'm like, I don't. Let me like call you back. But like there was all this chaos. We're 11 people, like literally just how do we make sure this thing does not topple over? Right? Like none of us expected any of this.
It's a good stress test.
It was a crazy stress test. But it was also like timed with like Avalanche Rush and Luna was getting aggressive. And it was like we're kind of this like thing in the middle of like this. Like it was also like it was peak Phantom season. And there was just so much chaos everywhere. But yeah, I mean, fast forwarded a few months there, but that's sort of like, it was a crazy, that was the craziest professional year of my life, I would say.
Kind of going back to like the scaling landscape, like how do you explain, how Arbitrum is different to people? Like when you're trying to talk to them and be like, there's all these other options, but you should use Arbitrum because XYZ. Like what are normally the big talking points that come up?
Yeah. So I would say there's two, and I'll talk the book now. Right. There's two things. One is technical, right? So at Offchain Labs, and again, obviously now with the Arbitrum DAO being like controlling the public protocol, it's a little different because there's nothing that we can do that affects the public protocol without a vote by the community. Like I think right so far the community has embraced a lot of our roadmap of like what we want to do with the technology, and like obviously there's like probably 50 orbit chains on production already that are tapping into this either on mainnet or testnet. So like Psy, for example,
Yes.
Sobe's chain, I'm sure we'll talk about that for a little bit, but so we're working on the technology, but we've, I would say, been at the forefront of scaling and like production ready, mature environments. I think that's resonated with a lot of people, right? Like Arbitrum's been battle tested for like 2.5 years now, probably the furthest in the decentralization roadmap in terms of like community having the ability to take control of contracts so that it's not controlled by like a single entity. We're moving forward with like Stylus, which is like a really cool thing, which we probably haven't done a good enough job marketing, which is basically like today Arbitrum's like EVM compatible. And like there's a lot of rollups that are EVM compatible, so it's not a product differentiator. We added Stylus, it's already live on testnet, which is basically like take a second virtual machine, put it side by side the EVM, so you have full interoperability. It's not like a second blockchain which you have to bridge. It's one blockchain, and you can write your contracts in like Rust, C, C++. We're going to add Move, and we're hoping to add like Cairo, other languages that fully interoperate with the EVM.
Gotcha.
And the advantages of that are like if you have like a Solana style contract in Rust, right now you don't have anywhere to go. You have to stay on Solana. You can't tap into the EVM, or you have to rewrite in Solidity. This is like, all right, now you can just write in Rust, and like, okay, you want to write something on top of Uniswap? Like you can. Like you can have a Solana app interact with Uniswap. Like obviously not on Solana, but on Arbitrum using some Stylus stuff, right? So we're seeing a lot of people do like really cool stuff around like dark pools that are like a lot of like cryptographic and privacy things that are just way too expensive in Solidity. But like, okay, we have our Solidity contracts. Let's add these Rust and C things on top of it that just make it much easier. So a lot of people are really excited about the technical roadmap at the like a developer level. I think that's probably not. I think that's our Offchain Labs strongest suit. I mean, the Arbitrum community strongest suit is the developers community of builders. It's just like I would say there's not a comparable ecosystem of builders. Maybe so. I mean, obviously Ethereum, but like let's put that aside for a second.
Yeah.
That's like everybody, right? Maybe Solana's like starting to get there, but the Arbitrum ecosystem, particularly in DeFi, is unmatched. A lot of that, I would say, is our go-to-market strategy when we launched the chain, right? So, as you guys know, no token when we launched, right?
Yes.
Like I said, we were like launching in an era of like peak Phantom, Avalanche Rush, like hundreds of millions of dollars, Polygon just like exploding. And I'm like, all right, we can't like open like a $5 million grant program. Like you're bringing a knife to like a gunfight at that point, right? Like we don't have that. Like we can't.
It doesn't
do
move
that.
the needle. For
It doesn't
people
move the
most
needle for
part.
anyone, right? People are getting like $5 million to like launch an NFT project on like another chain, right? Like it's like, what are you going to do with $5 million, right? So we basically didn't spend any money.
Yeah.
All we did was spend our time. And like I remember working with like GMX, and it was like GMX started as like a project on Binance Smart Chain that like
Yeah, I remember
it
before
was
they
called
changed-
Gambit.
Yeah, I remember
like,
Gambit.
And like no one used it. They were looking for a new home. They were looking for us, and like I just worked like really closely with them. And again, I'm the only person on the business development team. Like Polygon's got like their army of people.
Yeah, they
and it's,
got
like,
100 people.
like literally 100 people. And we had two community managers that like join the team, Nina and Hunter at the time, who by the way are amazing. But like still like basically like we have no resources whatsoever. And I was just like in the trenches with like GMX, like, and like they're like, look, we have to go to Avalanche. Like they're giving a huge incentive. Like, I'm like, go, like, go. I can't stop you from going. I can't justify you not going. I have the conviction that our technology and our community and what we're trying to build will bring you back here. And now obviously they're like they're still on Avalanche, but they're obviously a huge part of the Arbitrum eco.
And they definitely do more volume on Arbitrum.
Oh
than
yeah,
on
like
Avalanche.
90%.
Yeah.
Like 90% of their volume's on Arbitrum. And I don't think that's the kind of thing that like was replicable if you have money. and we're starting to see it now with like the Arbitrum DAO doing tons of grants. It's like this stuff becomes a crutch really easily, and it becomes commoditized really easily. And again, like when I talk about like the financialization of everything, if that's your pitch, if that's your play, they're just going to move
because you can't keep up. Because then Blast is going to come out and they're going to give an airdrop to developers, and then the next one
There's
will
another
come out.
optimism grant.
I always say that this stuff is a Game of Thrones, and it's like which family is going to have enough resources to last long enough. Like that's what crypto is, right? And you've got to spend non-financial resources to be able to do it. And again, like everyone says it. The question is how do you do it, right? And like, I think we did a really good job of it early on. Like I love working with like the Treasure guys, GMX, Dopex, like all these like Arbitrum native projects. Like I think really, and what happened was they're all paying it forward now. Like CoinFlip from GMX is like working with tons of DeFi teams on Arbitrum. Like as an example, like, there's a lot of people like that, but it's just created this like flywheel effect of builders that are like super passionate about the community that's being built. I think they're passionate. They care about Arbitrum. I'm not so sure they care about the technology as much as the camaraderie that's come along with like the builders.
I could definitely see that
in the eco, right?
And
so
I feel like
maybe they'll all collectively rug Arbitrum. I don't think they will, but like they could. But that did influence, for example, like our strategy with the airdrop, right? So like we did this thing called like the DAO airdrop. I don't know if you've seen that. But basically, instead of just only airdropping to users, we took 10% of the airdrop and airdropped it to DAOs. So like you had to have a DAO. Like if you were a project without a token, like I felt really bad like when we designed this, like, but it just didn't work. The point wasn't to give grants. It was like, all right, we cede governance control to your DAO, right? So like GMX and Treasure got the most. Like there's like 115 DAOs that took part in this. And now they all have control in Treasury and control of the Arbitrum Treasury, control of the direction of the community in a way that's like really important and doesn't really resonate when you only give a user airdrop. So
because they just sold it.
Because they just sold it. Exactly. And like,
they're like, I don't want the governance decisions.
Yeah, and I don't really blame users, right? Like if you get like a lot of money and it's like a meaningful thing for you, like I'm not really going to be here and criticize you for selling it, right?
But the DAO is way more incentivized to hold it.
And it's also harder for them to just sell it, right? If it's a true DAO, especially, it's like you have accountability. And whether it's on-chain accountability or off-chain accountability, like you can't just rug it, right? You got to do what the community wants to do. And like oftentimes the community wants to reinvest it and grow because that's like what the community cares for, right? So that was like the early stage Arbitrum sort of, I would say, narrative influenced sort of how we've set up, how we seeded and gave control to the community when we did that transition.
And how did that idea come up? Like, was that even prior to when you joined, or is that when you joined where they were like, Offchain is always going to be this separate entity, Arbitrum in the, spirit of being decentralized and community first. It's like, we want to.
Great question. When I joined, like, we weren't even thinking about that. Like, we were still very technology focused. What happened was, and like, when we didn't launch, like, people were telling us, like, investors, competitors, like, launch a token, where's the token, right? For like the
Give us the token.
And I'm just like, until we felt the technology was ready to actually be controlled by community governance, we didn't launch a token. And the reason for that was like, we didn't want a meme coin or a shit coin. We went from like zero to decentralized like in one day. Like all of the, like if you look at like Arbitrum governance, like Offchain Labs cannot, like right now we run the sequencer on behalf of the DAO, but the DAO can remove us. And like we're hopefully going to be at decentralized sequencing soon. But like we can't stop or turn off the protocol. Like there's no mechanism with, like Offchain Labs doesn't have a kill switch.
There's no red button.
There's no red button, right? And we went from like zero to that in like one day, right? Which is like a really scary thing. And it took months to get that decentralized governance up and running. But that was like what we wanted to do. So until we kind of realized like, all right, without a token, I'm not really sure how we transition to community governance. Because the big thing about L2s, and this is maybe too much down a rabbit hole, we'll start there for a second, is the thing that people have to appreciate is like an L1, if something goes wrong, can fork. So, right, you guys probably remember the 2016, the DAO hack, and like...
Yep. ETH Classic.
Just forked, right? ETH Classic came around, right? Another crazy day, but that happens. L2s can't fork unless the L1 forks for it, right? So you can't fork Arbitrum unless Ethereum forks because the contracts are built on top of Ethereum. Ethereum is not forking
No.
for a crisis on any L2, right? No matter how dumb, like Arbitrum's got like a huge impact in the Ethereum ecosystem. L2 is not, Ethereum's not forking for Arbitrum. So you need upgradability. Otherwise, if you have immutability, your thing becomes a dinosaur in a year, right? Because like, for example, when we have the stylus upgrade that we want to propose to the community, you'd have to relaunch Arbitrum, and then every app and every infrastructure provider would
Yeah, it's
migrate.
impossible.
It's never happening, right? So you need to maintain upgradability, unlike Ethereum, which doesn't have to because they just say, okay, everyone's going to fork at this block,
Yep.
and that's our upgradability. So you need upgradability. So governance, again, people love to say governance tokens are memes. Governance is the heartbeat of an L2 because if you don't have governance, if let's say it's immutable, then you're never going to upgrade. So that's not an option, right? You're building something that's destined to die within like 2 years because everyone's making order of magnitude improvements. If you don't have good governance and you control it yourself, then you're really just controlling the network, right? So for us, things like what should the profit margin be on every transaction, right? Because every transaction is like, you know, I'm sure you guys have used Arbitrum, right? It's like 12 cents
Many
a
times.
It's like 12 cents a transaction. Cost to the protocol 10 cents to post to Ethereum on your behalf. So the protocol
2
makes
cents.
2 cents, right? I know maybe that should be 1 cent, maybe that should be 5 cents, right? Those are like really important questions about like the sustainability and the business model of the protocol. And that's all controlled by the community, right? Reinvestment, right? The Arbitrum DAO has like $27 million worth of ETH
Yeah.
in their treasury that
I
they
did not know
control.
that.
Yeah. They're more than 10,000 ETH in the Arbitrum treasury. They make about $100,000 a day.
And that's just from sequencer fees?
That's from Sequencer Delta, right? So they make like, I would say on the average day, probably about 250. And then it probably takes about 180 to post, 170 to post to Ethereum. And they're making that Delta and it goes right into the DAO treasury. The DAO can control. The DAO can buy back ARB if they want. They can distribute the ETH. They can do whatever they want with it, right? But the point is all that is controlled by the community. And like, these are really important questions. So we went from 0 to 1 really quickly. And when we thought about that, and this goes to like, you know, the DAO airdrop thing, we're like, who's best to manage this? Because we don't want to do this. This like Offchain Labs doesn't get involved in community governance. We want the community to have control. You need to have the builders that care.
Yes.
And they will do what is best for the collective businesses. But you can't have seed concentration too heavily, right? If you have 3 teams, that's going to have them hijack it for their benefit. So there's hundreds of Arbitrum DAOs, and we have like university blockchain clubs. Everybody, they're all vying for figuring out the business model for this collective, and it's really cool.
Yeah, I know our good friend Sobi has got we talked about him a little bit.
Oh my God!
With,
Yes.
Yeah.
with
He was
Zai.
on our first full season of the pod. That's a funny one. But yeah, why don't you guys want to talk a little bit about the like kind of larger Arbitrum ecosystem that has grown outside of the DAO as well, as far as, you know, layer 3s and what is it, Arbitrum Nova, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
and like kind of how, like, I guess I'm curious outside of just purely the technical side too, which I think that stuff is interesting. Like, what was the evolution of kind of like the more business and strategy thought process there? Was it always start with Arbitrum and then do Nova and then L3s?
Yeah.
Or did that evolve over time as you saw how the space was shifting?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we're going to start back in 2021 because I think there'll be a lot of insight. And so much of this was influenced, I would say, by our time of launch.
Yeah.
Optimism, I would say, had all of the mind share of the community, and we had to figure out like how to build excitement. And we had a very different strategy, right? They had like synthetics, Kane, Uniswap, like Hayden. There was like very much sort of the optimism camp, and we're like, let's build this thing very bottom up. That's why we had the permissionless deployment. And it was a time when like DeFi was absolutely critical to shine in, right? And from a security perspective, it was the thing that like L2s, I would say, differentiated more from L1s. Like bridging to Phantom versus bridging to an L2, like people just feel way more comfortable, I would say, bridging to an L2 with like a meaningful amount of money, right? And like, we're like, okay, go to market is try and seed a DeFi ecosystem on Arbitrum through like identifying good builders and helping them succeed. I would say we got like really lucky with like some builders like GMX, for example, who really loved what we were doing. And then like the meme coins like Arbition, these things created like flywheels where it's just like, oh my God, there's so much liquidity here now. It's like an oasis of like there was literally nothing there. And there's just like billions of dollars to tap into, and it's like, okay, this is fantastic, right? So we created a flywheel and we helped all these builders, and what we really quickly realized was we brought fees down like 90 something percent from Ethereum, but for certain use cases this just doesn't work.
It's still not enough.
It's not enough, right? So like, and also, so like at the time we're talking about probably 3 different use cases. There was DeFi, which was like not very fee sensitive. So like Arbitrum at the time was like, let's say Ethereum was like $50 a transaction, which was obviously insane. Arbitrum's like $1. But like you still have like, Polygon was like 5 cents, Avalanche was like 10 cents. But like people really didn't care in DeFi between $1 and 10 cents if they were like doing like meaningful economics.
Yeah, because most people who are doing that are moving
10 plus thousand.
Yeah,
exactly,
a lot of
right?
money.
So we're like, this is our bread and butter. This is great. PFPs, like a lot of people started targeting like PFPs. I'm like, we're not getting major PFP collections to launch on Arbitrum because they're all trying to like replicate Bored Apes, right? And like the only place like with like Bored Apes, like $50 gas fees is a feature, not a bug. You know what I mean? It's like the fact that the flex is that I spent $50 in gas fees on a JPEG.
Yeah,
like that's the
Like
flex.
I paid over 10,000 for it. Like I didn't care about $50 in gas.
Exactly, right? Like, but like it's part of the flex, right? Like if we're talking about a place where it's like you like are trading like really quickly because there's no gas fees and it's like commoditized. Like I think Blur, by the way, has like kind of impacted that with like the narrative around PFPs a lot.
Yeah.
It's like it's not as cool, right? So that's why I think like the major PFPs never really took off on other ecosystems. So we just basically stayed out of that. Small Brains was like an interesting exception on Arbitrum. Like they really had their day. Like they crushed it.
And they're still like really popular.
Yeah, they're
Like,
still very popular.
I still see
Yeah.
them as like a symbol of the Arbitrum community.
Yeah, they're 100%. Yeah, the Treasure DAO, Small Brain community, definitely a symbol of the Arbitrum community. But that was part of a larger game thing, right? Which is like a little bit different.
It wasn't just a Bored Ape.
It wasn't just a Bored Ape. It was like, all right, this is going to get you into this small game. Like they have Bridge World, they have all these different things, and like they've got a roadmap of gaming. And I think that was part of like the narrative, right? But what we realized, the third vertical of gaming, like this is never going to take off here. So we were really early on this like alternative data availability thing, which is like now like a huge thing. Like, right, Celestia. Everyone's talking about this now. But when we launched Arbitrum Nova, Nova's like the cheapest gas fees around, like sub penny. And that was like really important. We got that out almost 2 years ago now. It was like on testnet 2021, like May.
Yeah, I remember you guys followed Arbitrum like relatively quickly afterwards with Nova.
Exactly. It was within a year. Nova launched within a year of Arbitrum as a second blockchain. And the reason for that was because we're like, we need to build product that matches use cases, right? And this is actually, I think, a really good example of something we did well. It's like we just launched a chain that is doing really well, Arbitrum 1, and we're launching a second chain, right? How are we differentiating these things? So one of the things that I think we did well to limit confusion was we didn't tell any DeFi projects to go launch on Nova. Like sometimes people make that mistake, right? It's like, I got 2 chains, or like I got different things. Like, oh, let's tell the DEX to launch on both, or
you fragment the liquidity.
Then you're fragmenting liquidity. You're fragmenting narrative. People don't understand. We're like, no. Nova is for use cases that just don't make sense on anything other than side chains, and this is just technically better than a side chain. That was like our positioning, right? We probably hurt the growth of Nova because we could have just said use the cheapest fees thing, right? And then and got everybody to migrate off of Arbitrum 1. But it didn't really match our roadmap of what we wanted to do. We want Arbitrum, we want security, we think that's important. But like alternative data availability, like it just unleashed a lot of things, right? So like, things like games, like Pirate Nation has got like, their games have like 40 transactions a day per user. It's like, that doesn't work even in a 5-cent environment. You need to be sub penny, right?
For sure.
So that's why we launched Nova. That's the timing we did it. Like Nova's been pretty good. I would say it hasn't captured like the mind share of like, I would say like a Polygon POS. I think Polygon POS also like that was their core chain, right? And now what they're doing is they're struggling, I would say, to get people to go to a more expensive environment, the ZK VM, because it's like everything's on the Polygon POS chain. Like, you know what I mean?
Why would I go?
Like, why would I go
cheaper?
Right?
And a lot of
like,
people don't think like, what's the difference between POS and ZK? It's just an acronym and an acronym.
Right, exactly. They don't like obviously the ZK VM is way better technology, and like kudos to them for launching. But like the struggle they have now is like it didn't have a segmented narrative of like this is not a DeFi chain, because at the time that's all they had. It was one chain. But now they got to get the DeFi away, and they're doing a really good job, I think, of doing that. But that's why they have a bigger struggle, because they already have an existing chain, right?
Yeah, and it's like the users who are already on Polygon POS, They were already on the POS.
Exactly.
They're not going to be like, oh, the more secure chain. Yeah, let me go there. They're like, I was happy to use the
I
less
was
secure chain.
I was very happy with this,
Yeah.
right? So like that's why we, like with Nova, we're like, okay, Nova might not do as well, but we're not going to have a narrative confusion, right? So what we kind of like do with Nova now is like in many ways, I would say, and this feeds into like the orbit strategy. It's almost like a launching ground of like a public network for people who anticipate like with scale they're going to need their own chain, right? So like proof of plays there. You know, you guys know like the Pixel Vault team.
Yeah.
Reboot. Yeah, exactly.
GG.
So exactly. Reboot. They're on like their token lives on Arbitrum One. We can talk about how we think about these things, but
I'm curious about that as well. Actually.
but like they're on Nova right now, right? So they got a few like really strong games. Like, you know, Reddit was on Nova. They've discontinued it, but the community took over control of like Moons, which is like a whole interesting thing. But whatever. I don't want to talk about too much about the Reddit stuff.
You've probably got enough from the Redditors on social media.
But like the point is, it's like it's those use cases, right?
Yes.
And like you're not at a point yet where it makes sense to like have your own chain. You don't have you know you can still deal with a noisy neighbor issue, and that's kind of what Nova is. But like a lot of teams that are, you know, some of them are just skipping Nova right now, but a lot of them are going to move into their own execution environments and build their own chains, like these orbit chains, basically. Which is sort of like the next evolution of, I would say, the technology. It's probably come on quicker than I think. You know, to be honest, like let's not focus on Arbitrum just now, but just generally the whole app chain thesis.
Yeah.
I think it's been a little bit premature, personally. Like none of these L2s are congested, right? Like there's like plenty of gas block space that like hasn't even been met from a demand perspective. What I wish we did instead of like having like all these different L2s launch, and I think it's starting to play out a little bit, is like, how do we launch L2s or L3s, and we'll talk about the differences, you know, different DAs that like actually enhance the application developer use case, right? So like, for example, one thing that I'm like, we're excited about, like we're working with Frame, and like they're trying to build like an NFT focused chain, and like they're building into like the Arbitrum node and smart contract layer is like programmability that like you can't rug creator royalties, right? So like they're building an environment that like has something that is like optimized for what they want to do.
Gotcha.
Right. And like that's really cool to me, right? Because you can't do that on a public chain, like at the chain level. You need your own environment to be able to do this. And it provides a lot of value to the use case that they're trying to develop and proliferate. Or like, for example, with Sobi's chain, Psy, which, you know, at Offchain Labs, we've been helping them launch. They've got like really intense on-chain gaming contracts, right?
Yes.
So the public chains, for like certain reasons, which are like way beyond me, have limited contract size limits. With his, we've extended it. Like his contract size limits are way bigger. So it allows developers who want to do like really intense computational stuff with their contracts to be able to deploy there more easily in a like gaming optimized environment, right? So like those things I think are like really interesting. I think what we did was we just launched a whole bunch of L2s and L3s as a community. And it's like, just try this, try that, instead of like spending more time designing these things that can advance the use case. So I think we're recalibrating a little bit. You know, there's about maybe 50 Arbitrum orbit chains in production or on mainnet now. And that's like in the last 3 months, basically. So it's been crazy to see that. One of the interesting things that we always thought about was like, how does this stuff sustain the Arbitrum protocol? Which is like, I think, a major question, right? Like,
Yeah. How is this a feasible business?
like how, like why, like, and I think that like this is like a crypto, you know, maybe this is like maybe not politically correct. Sorry, give me a second.
Oh, no, you're good.
But like, I like the idea that like crypto is like permissionless, open source, all that stuff. But you have to trade off against sustainability. And it has to do with, again, that whole theme of like financialization that I was saying before. Because like otherwise, like somebody else is just going to like launch the exact same protocol with a new token and like vampire everything.
Yes.
Right.
And the fees go to zero.
And everything goes to zero. Right. And like what like entrepreneur wants to like work in that environment? Like nobody. It's like I find that to be one of the most stressful things about crypto. Is there's like a pretty meaningful aversion to like the idea of like technical moats. And I think like there's a lot that we're giving up that people are not acknowledging by that. You know what I mean? It's like there's people have like vibes moats.
Yeah.
It's a moat for some, right? Like
Culture.
Like Monad is trying that. Like that Monad thing is like, I think they have good tech. I don't know enough about their tech, but like it's obvious like part of their go to market is like a vibes moat.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like some people don't have vibes moats, and like they might have technical moats. And like what happens is like you're not supposed to have a technical moat because everybody's supposed to be able to just take everything. And I think that there should be limitations there. Personal opinion. There are things that are like public goods, and like for example, like at Offchain, like we acquired Prism, like Prismatic Labs, the team that builds like the Ethereum. That's like a public good. Like we don't monetize that. Like we want to contribute back to Ethereum. We pay for all of the development off of our balance sheet for Prism, which is like the number one Ethereum, staking consensus client, and that's great. And like I think that like having public goods is a critical thematic component of building blockchain technology. But there has to be like, if we had no sustainability with our business model, like we wouldn't be able to do that.
Yes.
Right. And so when we thought about designing the Arbitrum Orbit stack, we're like, what stops someone in like, maybe they won't. So like we had a BSL license, which is like the Uniswap license before we launched the token. Because we're like, we don't want to get vampired and have to launch a token prematurely. Because somebody's going to do that. Like there was literally teams that told us, like, can we just do that? And I'm just like, no, why would I want you to vampire me? Right?
Yeah, that seems
like I'm good, right? Like, but like people, like that's what I mean. Like there was like no.
Can we fuck you?
There was like no shame in like that ask, and that's what I mean by like it being like confusing how this is like a thing. There was like no shame in that. It was like accepted, right? Like, can we vampire you?
Yeah, we're gonna fuck you.
And I'm just like, no, I don't want to get vampired, right? So we threw
thanks, but no thanks.
So we threw a BSL. But then afterwards, we're like, all right, we want more people to be able to use this technology. We have a token. I still don't want people to just take it and launch a second token. So how do we think about this? How do we think about that balance? So this is like, and again, this is all experimentation. Who the hell knows how it plays out? But what we did was, if you want to launch an Arbitrum Orbit chain that's on top of Ethereum, on top of Arbitrum, like an L3, let's just call it that for a second, right? Permissionless. You can do whatever you want. You can bastardize the code. You can change it, you can modify, you can permissionlessly deploy, you can do whatever you want. And the thesis being, it's like, if I build more railroads into Arbitrum 1 as Grand Central Station, like that will accrue value back. Like it might not be, I mean, it's technical in the sense like all L3s post transactions to L2s that posted to L1. So like you capture a little bit, but like more meaningfully, it's
mind share.
It's mind share. And I'm like, but for example, like we've seen this in like Cosmos, it's like 1,000 people deploy chains that are just like side by side. Like they don't accrue value back to like some, atom mechanism.
Yes.
So if you want to launch an L2, you need permission from the DAO. And that's proven to be like a little bit complicated because like nobody wants to talk to the DAO. No one wants to like.
It's a pain in the ass.
It's a pain. Yeah.
Yeah, how does that process go? Is it like you write up a grant?
So you write up a proposal, and like only one team has ever written a proposal to the DAO asking for an L2 license. And like honestly, everyone just ignored it. So the foundation, Patrick at the foundation, Patrick McCrory worked with the DAO and was like, all right, let's find like a middle ground solution where basically the foundation has a rubric of what they follow, and like they're giving licenses out to people who want to launch L2s who will contribute sequencer revenue fee back to the Arbitrum DAO, and like they manage that. That's where we're at like today. We're actually probably releasing either like early next week or soon after. We're going to modify the license to basically say, and this is like sort of alpha, which might be wrong if it changes a little bit. Let's just whatever.
Yeah.
If you contribute a percentage of sequencer revenue fee back to the Arbitrum DAO, you can permissionlessly use the code base as an L2. You can do it as an L2. You can do it as an L3 on top of a different L2, right? If you want to use an OP stack as an L2 and launch an L3 on top of it.
Way less friction to get involved.
Way less friction, permissionless. You don't have to talk to anybody, you just have to contribute sequencer revenue back. And I actually think that's like a really interesting model because it's acknowledging that like we want more people to be able to use the technology. And like this fee, it's like, we're probably gonna be around 10%. It's like, I don't want to like take and destroy your business. What I want you to do is like recognize what you're doing and acknowledging and like contribute to the sustainability of this and then do your own thing. Like I'm not limiting like what you can do with the code. Do whatever you want, but just kind of acknowledge like what you're
if
being
you
built
if
on.
you are gaining value, you need to give some value back to us so that this all works for everybody.
Yeah, otherwise it just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Because you're
right?
just taking all the work we've done, all the goodwill, and just getting it all for free, and then
Yeah, and it becomes a vampire, and it's just like, so that's going to be going live, and I'm really excited for that because I think there's a lot of people who want to do a lot of different things, and you don't want to stop people from doing these things. Like, I love the fact that like everything everyone in crypto does is built on the shoulders of the giants that come before them. But they're like, the idea that everything can just be completely open source and forkable, and this is, I think it actually hurts innovation. I really do, because you have a lot of builders who get frustrated, and like I mean, we all saw like what happened with Union Sushi, right? And it's like, if I was at Uniswap, like I'd be like extremely frustrated, and
for sure.
you know,
But they definitely were.
yeah, right. There's no question,
like,
and,
what
right?
the
And
fuck?
it's like, but like, and again, like I like the sushi team. I think like there's been a big change in terms of how they think about these things and being more
Sense.
collaborative since.
Oh yeah.
But like, you know, did we gain by the frustration of the folks at Uniswap? I don't think as a community we gained. I think we probably lost. I think some of like their hesitancy, probably with like stuff since then, has been increased because of like the scars of that, right? So like,
You're worried you put out something and then it's immediately forked.
yes, like
And
I
then-
don't know, did we push the space forward? I'm not sure we did, right? So like, but again, like you don't want it to be too aggressive. Like what we did was we recognized like this L2 license go to the DAO thing is like, it's too restrictive. So okay, let's recalibrate, right? And I think the Arbitrum ecosystem is going to really benefit from all of these different things that are happening. And you know, just going back to like this Grand Central Station kind of thing, one of the interesting things is that I think it reinforces, like for example, with Sobi, he's got this L3 that he's building, but his token lives on Arbitrum 1.
Yes.
So that's where all the liquidity is, right? So again, like you have, and then he's working with fast bridging in between layer 2 and layer 3, so that you know it's a decent user experience for the users as the L3 launches. But again, like the fact that that's an L2 and L3 relationship, like Arbitrum 1, the community, Arbitrum as a whole ecosystem benefits from it, right? And that's I think it's a really important thing.
Yeah. And so with that, how does, so like for Sobeys, and maybe this is getting too technical, but it's something that I'm like curious about. I've been like following with their Sentry nodes and all of that. How does that work as far as, you know, governing their L3? Is that going to work, you know, maybe not the same, but in a similar style to how Arbitrum's L2 is governed?
So-
is that like a pretty
So that's a good question.
similar like kind of comparison?
So it's up to them, right? Like
Yeah, obviously up to them,
They
but
don't have their governance done yet.
theoretically-
We've open sourced like our governance modules, right? Like I don't think that's a moat. Like if somebody wants to take all the work we did on like decentralizing blockchains, like great. Like the more people that want to like decentralize and hand over community
like a
control,
public good.
Yeah.
that, like I'm happy. Like that's what I'm saying. Like we're not like, I'm not trying to like attach BSL to everything, right? It's like my mode is not the fact that we figured out how to decentralize this thing, right? So like for example, we've got a proposal now to the Ape chain, to the ApeCoin community. And what we proposed to them was like, let us build all of our Arbitrum modules for governance, decentralized governance, into your modules that you have for the ApeCoin for control of a chain, right? Like that's a good thing. I want people to take all that. So like, you know, Sobi's Sentry node thing is a little bit different. That was like, you know, part of like a broader strategy of community involvement they wanted. But the governance of upgradability, for example, they're either going to figure out a different mechanism or they're going to take the one that we have and
Yeah.
we'll probably help them like deploy it
Yeah.
basically.
So would that be like in kind of like a perfect world version of like the Orbit stack? Are you able to essentially from day one deploy, kind of like you were saying with you guys, totally decentralized L3 of like
if you want to,
day one we press go, the tokens go out, and the DAO is now in charge of upgradability. And all,
if you want to, you
wanted
can.
to.
Yeah, if you want to, you can. I think like there's a lot of like reasons why people on day one wouldn't want that, right? Because like, for example, you know, you realize you got like a config wrong and like, you know, you can't change it.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's over. You gotta like go back to the community and like ask it to change it. You might not want to do that on day one, right? So like
That's a strong start.
yeah, exactly, right? So but yeah, fundamentally I think that's the goal. You know, we have, you know, Parallel Finance is launching an L2 of Arbitrum. They're going to be contributing sequencer revenue back. They're adding like a blast like mechanism, I think, onto the Arbitrum stack. Right? It's like again, I love people innovating. Like Frame again, they're innovating with creator. Rarible's doing the same thing. They're launching an L3. They're going to integrate creator royalties directly into the node software. Right? Like and like, I love that. That's great. Like, I want people to be able to do that, and like they're contributing back into the community, they're contributing back into the ecosystem, and like I think that's fantastic. And the governance stuff, if they want to use it, like all the better. Like, let them use it, right? So, I think that's that's our path right now with this, and it's cool.
It's
That's
a
awesome.
lot to like fully wrap your head around, but it makes sense when you lay it out, like this Grand Central Station, going back to how you're just trying to drive people into the Arbitrum community anyway. It's like maybe their first exposure is Sobeys chain, maybe it's Battle Plan, maybe it's a DeFi product that fits their needs. Maybe it's like they saw Small on Twitter.
Yeah.
They're like, I want to be involved. But trying to just get them to know, like, this is the Arbitrum name, this is what it does. I think right now, a lot of the L2 stuff is just like opaque for people. It's like, what do they do? What is that? Like, why would I be on that chain? And normally it's just like people go to the chain because it's, hey, that's the thing I want to use. That's where it is. And I go to it.
I think we do. I think this is going to sound like self-contradictory as I say both things. So like, let me just try and explain it. As a community, we do two things. One is we love like putting the chain at the front, and it's like, that's not our path to like mass adoption. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if Netflix uses AWS or GCP or I have no idea, and I don't care. Right.
Yeah.
So like, we do that a little bit too much, but then we also don't do it enough, in the sense that like people try and overcorrect, and it's like, yeah, I just want it to be about the apps and account abstraction and all these things. And it's like, I think there's a middle ground for two reasons. One is the technology matters, right? Like what happens with like GCP and AWS, it's like the differences between them aren't one is immutable and one has like a multi-sig that can rug you. Like that, you know what I mean? Like those aren't those differences, right? So like you can't, if those were the differences, we wouldn't abstract it.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's one thing. And the second thing is like, if you're underestimating the role of community in crypto, like maybe this will be different in like 30 years when we have like 1 billion users. Like I think you're kind of like not destined to succeed.
Yeah.
Like you can't remove community from where we are today, right? It doesn't work. So like, yes, the Arbitrum community means a different thing to like we have the most degen of DeFi traders that are like on GMX or Vertex or Hyperliquid, or any of these, perps protocols. And then we have people who just want to play a pirate game, like Proof of Play's Pirate Nation. And like, that's okay. That's fine. But I do think that it is important for them both to in some way acknowledge that like, what's the picture of like Arbitrum? And I don't think that it has to be at the forefront. I think like some people put it too far, but like you also like, I think we're overcorrecting and pretending like it doesn't matter when it kind of does.
I agree with that, because I think like a big part of that is meeting your users where they're at. And like the fact of the matter is, the people who are going to really be passionately using Arbitrum or any of its L3s or anything anytime soon, like they're pretty interested in the chain.
Yeah.
Like they're not hoping to use this thing and have account abstraction and know nothing. Like they're power users. Even if if you're a basic crypto user right now, like in the grand scheme of things, you are a crypto power user comparatively. And so I agree. I think that like not trying to like hide some of the more like obvious things that people care about is smart. But I think what you said too about community is something that Arbitrum has done really well in like kind of just fostering a good vibe and like people who care about crypto. And like, I remember when you guys originally hired Size Chad forever ago, that was one of those things where it was like, that's fucking weird that they did that. But also like, that's very smart that they did that. Like that makes a lot of sense in like a battle where it's like, how do we get someone to use, and battle's a strong word for it, but like how do we get someone to use our chain instead of someone else's? Like having your friend who you shitpost with on Twitter be the BD connection is like a meaningful difference.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of stuff you guys got early on and were quick to accept. And I think like Optimism and other chains have realized that and caught on and now do a good job of that as well. But you guys, I think, are like very much so at the forefront of that.
Well, yeah. I think too, when I think of like the Arbitrum users, I think, high TVL, but I think of like the wealthier degens or like the people who have a lot of liquidity who do care about the tech because like they want to make sure what they're being a degen with is somewhat safe. It's like that stuff kind of matters. And I notice, on some of the other chains, it's like only shit coins. It's like the shitcoin ecosystem. We're on AVAX, we're trading cock.
Right.
And it's like the AVAX Foundation is like, we're going to put money into cock.
That
And
was,
you-
that
and you're-
was
That was one of the most insane.
that
things.
tweet is going to be copy pasted for decades.
and you're just like, you know, I don't really use AVAX that much, but it's like, wow, they're like taking like their foundation money and putting it into the meme coin. Like the degens are like, yeah, they're pumping our bags, but like, is that the community you really want to foster?
Yeah.
And then like, I feel like on the Arbitrum, it's like the opposite. Like there's like no talk of putting, you know, Arbitrum treasury money
No.
into fucking any of the shit coins.
Yeah.
like,
No, there's a proposal now that the DAO is putting together to buy like real world assets.
like something
But like
legitimate.
we should take $100 million and like start earning yield on like money market treasuries on Arbitrum.
Yeah,
and
not
stuff.
buying cock. Like,
It's very different, and you know it's interesting because I actually track some of this stuff, and like I'm always surprised. Like ETH USDC is like the most traded pair on Arbitrum, and I'm like, that's probably a good thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
right? You know what I mean? Like that's probably what
Yeah.
we need, you know. And like I like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good. It actually reminds me of something I wanted to ask about earlier with the, you know, kind of longer multi-chain world. How much do you guys think about, maybe the answer is not at all, like USDC or like USD pegged currency, like day one availability and stuff? Like to me, that feels like something that's so important. Like if Sobe's launching Zai or any of these L3s, like having a like trustworthy stable coin on that chain from early on feels so important. Is that something where you guys have like kind of fostered relationships where you can help with those things? How do you think about that
so
stuff?
so we work with like Circle and very closely on like we're trying to build them. So the public chains is a bit of a mess because originally there was the bridged USDC because they
Yeah.
didn't do native minting on day one, and now we have like USDC.E and kind of like it was with AVAX like 2
Yeah.
years ago. If you guys
Well, that's even
remember.
how Base is now, and it's
Yeah.
like there's USD BC and USDC,
and it's very complicated.
and it's like I'm just messaging Jesse Pollock, and I'm like, "Hey, can you please tell me which one of these I should be using?"
Yeah, exactly. It's very complicated. So we're trying to work with Circle to like avoid all that. The problem is that like there's a lot of like legal and compliance complexity with them like owning contracts. Because like if it's a bridged contract, it's like very different. It's like, all right, somebody just bridge this there, right? And what's nice about like L2s and L3s is like it's a trustless bridge. It's not like a custodial bridge. So like if you bridged into Sobe's L3 from Arbitrum, it's like you can take the natively minted Arbitrum USDC and bridge it across, and like it sits in a smart contract on Arbitrum, which you can self call yourself, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it has that like L2 principle to it, right? So that's nice. We're trying to make that UX with like CCGP as like good as possible. So the goal is like to work with them to like avoid having this like dual USDC world ever on other chains. And yeah, we talk to them almost every day about it.
Nice.
Right. So like this is a great example of like where product needs to meet like the road meets the rubber. Like we can't onboard and have like 3 different USDC instantiations.
It's confusing as shit.
Like this is not going to work.
It's way worse for their product as well.
And
But
they
I
know.
totally get it because they have so many legal
Yeah,
constraints.
they get it. I think
Yeah.
they're very aware of this. So like we're working to make this like not an issue. But we've been developing a strategy for like migration on like the Arbitrum public chain, like to get as little USDC.E
Yeah.
as possible. But yeah, this stuff is like it's very hard. It's and like when in like the multi-chain world. So like let's talk about that for a second because I think it's important. Like Solana, I think even Solana people recognize like there's no way you're bringing 7 billion people onto one blockchain. Like that's just nothing works like that, right? So you need to have like, multiple chains. And I think that there will always be multiple chains. There's going to be a lot of chains. There's going to be optimized chains for certain things. And you're going to have like bridging standards that will continue to improve interoperability. But one of the things that I think is going to happen, like, Ed actually just published a research post on this in the Arbitrum research forums where it's like, we're going to have like chain clusters. And like Optimism is kind of doing this with the Superchain. If you guys are like familiar with that. We're trying to do a little bit different on our tech stack. Like the Superchain is trying to take like a bunch of different chains and like bring them to like a single standard ecosystem. So like they'll bring like Zora and Base and OP mainnet, etc., and like make a Superchain, right? The limitation that I see there is like they all have to have the same exact tech stack, or all of like them have to have a tech stack that's been approved by this like collective kind of thing. It's like a union, right? So it's like you might be able to make a change, but like that change needs to be approved by this, right? So I think that's not like ideal in the sense that like people are going to want to make changes that are not approved or like that are disadvantageous to a neighboring chain, and like they don't want to have shared security at that point, right? So what we're thinking about now and we're like exploring is like chain clusters, which is essentially like how do we take like Arbitrum 1 and just add a lot of throughput, but all have it still governed by Arbitrum 1. Like basically like shard Arbitrum 1. And it's like, that doesn't necessarily mean there's another company, like Base is like part of this. It's like, no, there's just like, I don't know, 100 Arbitrum 1 chains that are sharded, are doing shared interoperability, but all governed by Arbitrum, and they have the exact same code base. And if you don't want to be in that code base, then you just launch an Orbit chain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, we have to think about interoperability there, but it's like, I think we're going to start seeing that, where there's a lot of like horizontal scaling of the same technology stack to meet needs. And again, like this is still super early and complex. I don't think there's like, I think we've overemphasized the priority of it today. There isn't that much demand for this today. Like if we look at it again, like I would say the average L2 is at like 40%, 30% capacity for like the top 5, and the rest are like 5% capacity. Right? So like there's a lot of space we're talking about. And again, nobody's happy with where we're at. We all want way more users and way more users. But like, I don't know, I'm kind of embarrassed on this idea of like more block space would bring them better apps. I think the thing that bring better apps is like when VCs don't make 100x every time they launch a new L1. You know what I mean? Like, like that's, I think, the biggest blocker for better apps. If we're talking about it, it's like, why would you invest if you're a VC in anything else? Because like the playbook has been set.
I had this exact same conversation with someone who has been on this podcast before, Will Price, who a lot of people know. And I was saying to him, we were just like having lunch, shooting the shit. And I was like, honestly, if all you cared about, I was saying from a builder's perspective, but same thing. I was like, if you want to build in crypto for the next 2 years or 5 years, and all you care about is like, what is the like lowest risk, high multiple thing I can do? You just launch an L1 or an L2 and like just do like the total normal VC playbook with it, and you will make a lot of money. Yeah, as long as you don't totally fuck it up somehow.
Yeah, it's exactly. That is in my opinion the biggest, and that is the biggest blocker in crypto. And I'll tell you why it happens though, in my opinion. Again, like I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, guys, but like it goes back to what I was saying earlier about like an aversion to traditional business models. We try and like, even like people are like launching a game. It's like, well, if they stake this and they do that, then like, it's like, why can't you just charge them to play a game? like why do we need
pay
to,
$5 a month?
Why do we need to like do this and then stake that
Buy an
in
NFT.
order to get this derivative, which you can then sell on OpenSea, which can like grow into a second one if you hold it for 14 days. It's like, the reason why no one invests in that is because it doesn't make any sense. But if you had a game where it's like, okay, they're going to pay $20 a month because this is the average skin and they can resell it if they want and they get marketplace fees, and like a traditional business model that's built on a blockchain, I hope, again, the part of the problem is it might still not get to a point where the opportunity cost of investing in that is higher than an L1, right? And that's the problem, right? And I think that's honestly like the meaningful problem, right? The meaningful problem is, usually in a traditional world, IPO takes like 14 years. You have to hit like a certain set of things. But in crypto, you can like launch a token and like the VCs get exit liquidity. It's fantastic for them.
It's a year after you invest. You have a 1-year cliff.
So we need better traditional business models. We need better apps. And I think that's the biggest blocker is that like people are not. And I think part of it is like this whole staking, like all these things I was describing, it's like a joke. It's because people want to almost make like a user-focused app almost feel like infrastructure because they want to change the narrative, right? Or then that's why we saw like, I think a lot of the explosion of Orbit chains. Like now it's a little different, but a year ago, I think a lot of it was like a narrative shift from like I now have an application chain and I have a chain, right? And people cared about that, and I think that was like a huge thing, especially in the bear market when people were trying to raise money, right? So. More users is not, I think, a function of more block space. I think a function of more block space will come when we can justify apps. Like, you know, I wasn't like a big Friendtech user, but I remember the Friendtech hype. And
Fees
I was like,
were crazy.
I was like looking at these numbers, like, this is not a sustainable business model, right? Like, if the fees came down like 100x, I think we have a higher probability of this thing succeeding. And I love Racer, you know, in terms of like his creativity with all this kind of stuff. But like, it almost felt like a very another version of like, we need to have like this, like people don't spend $10,000 to enter chat rooms, right?
And when
like,
they do, they don't want to spend $20,000 or $2,000 in fees.
Exactly. Right. Right. Like, again, like if a traditional business model, I think, you know, and again, that could have changed over time. So I don't want to like pick on, I'm not trying to pick on Friendtech. I'm trying to like, I'm trying to highlight like how some of this stuff, like, you know, goes to the absurdity in crypto, because like traditional business models are almost just like frowned upon. I hope some of them work, right? Like, you know, if that was like a $10 thing, like $1 to enter in and out, like I'm curious to see if how that would have performed. It might not have performed. It might have been early.
There's definitely this idea that like, well, maybe my fees are like gonna get airdropped back to me in some way.
Yeah, but again, like that's
there's like this like idea that like, oh well, they made $50 million, so like maybe some of it's gonna come back to us. But
yeah, but even that, right? No one thinks about that when they have like a traditional business.
No, like
right?
what
It's
percent of our
did you when you sign up
overpriced
when you sign up? I don't know how old you are, but when you sign up for Facebook in like high school, right? That's what I did.
Yeah.
Did you ever think about like I might get equity from this startup?
No.
Right? And like that's like.
Am I gonna get airdropped on their IPO like a retroactive token?
Right, exactly. And like again, I'm not trying to be cynical about like the importance of like decentralizing control and governance, and I think a lot of these things are super important. But I think at the application layer, they're not the most important thing if we want to actually get meaningful adoption. I think that we've created this narrative because we need to, and it's a cycle. It's that like self-fulfills, right?
What's hard to like as an angel investor, you know, let's say you have $100,000 bookmarked to make angel investments with, and you have to figure out over the course of the year, like what is the best use of this $100,000 risk adjusted. It's very tempting to just put that all into, like you said, L1s or some scaling thing and just be like, hey, at the end of a year, there's 25% unlocked. And every month for the next 3 years, you get unlocked and just sell it. And it's a good risk adjusted return. But it's like, what there's, when I look at a lot of apps, I'm not excited. Like when like I get like a deck and it's like, oh, we're building this app. I look at it and I'm like, oh, I probably want to use this app. And then it just like turns off in my head. Whereas like the L1 is like,
what if someone else wants to use this L1?
It could be
I might
everybody.
not use it, but what if someone else wants to?
and it's this weird thing where I think like a lot of the angel investors through a, you know, just strictly like financial or betting sense are like, I'd be stupid not to take this play. But then
it feels like you're getting a deal on the house. That's all it feels like, right?
yeah, and then, you know, you look at the second order effect of that, like what type of behavior does that reward in our ecosystem? And it's like probably not the best behavior. And like, how do we incentivize more people to invest in apps or invest in the application layer rather than the infrastructure layer?
It feels like a lot of what we're discussing, by the way, is like the story of OpenSea.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like that balance and that challenge.
Yeah, and then
Right? Like, look, you know, I think they definitely made some mistakes along the way, but a lot of this was trying to compete with, I would say, a non-crypto native business in a crypto native environment, which is like what Blur turned NFT marketplaces into.
Yeah.
And the second that happened, it changed the game for them, right? And I think that's like a really, again, this is kind of like adjacent to your thoughts on like the philosophy of OpenSea and how they run their business. It's like the idea of running a business following traditional metrics around growth and eyeballs and retention and daily active users versus the virality of, you know, the ease by which tokens flow on a daily basis. And it's like an impossible thing to fight against. And, you know, the answer to that, I think, is like as a community recalibrating for product, but also, and it ties back to like licensing stuff, right? Like it goes back to that same point, like OpenSea, everything's open source, right? Like how are you supposed to defend yourself when everything's open source? Again, you might disagree with their decisions to like not decentralize or not have a token or not their impact to creator royalties. I think all those things, by the way, are not the reason that they've struggled. I think it's a lot of it is just tokens. And I think that we need to think about all of these things in parallel. Otherwise, it's going to be extremely hard to get better apps outside of DeFi. And that's why I'm always still like so focused on DeFi. And I love that the Arbitrum ecosystem is so focused on DeFi. Is DeFi in some ways is like DeFi in many ways is the arbitrage that I think almost every crypto person feels. And like, I'm sure you've had it, I've had it. I'll tell you my experience and you can tell me yours. Like when I was like in college and like I started like dabbling, like, oh, can I go to like AngelList and like all these different websites or like Silicon Valley Angel or whatever these things are. And it's like, oh, I'm not an accredited investor, so I can't do anything. And like that like visceral frustration is like everything that attracts me to DeFi. It's like I can do whatever I want with my money.
Don't need to be accredited.
It don't need to be accredited, and it's like an arbitrage on that.
And it's instant.
And it's an arbitrage on that system. And that's DeFi's moat, right? That's why DeFi works, right? Like DeFi with projects within each other will cannibalize each other. But like that's why DeFi is a killer use case to me, right? Because it has that arbitrage. But like if you want to have like, but the second, like, for example, like, you know, everyone would gatekeep and like see accredited investors. Unless you're an accredited investor, you can't use like Uniswap, for example, right? Like I don't mean the front end, I mean like the protocol. It's like this becomes less interesting. And I think like a lot of that, like that doesn't apply as well in like the NFT world, right? Where it's like, you know, I know you're a huge art collector, but like most people are not buying these NFTs. Like I would say because they want to like meaningfully invest in these. It's a lot of it's like speculation. It's just
I want to buy it so I can send this to the greater full for markup.
Exactly, right? Yeah. But like DeFi is not like that, right? DeFi, and that's why I like the ETH USDC and I track those things. Like that matters, right? And it's like the fact that like, and again, like the fact that, and when I bought Bitcoin for the first time in 2015, the first thought that I said to myself is like, I don't have that much money, but there is no higher risk reward opportunity in the world that I have access to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I can't buy Facebook pre-IPO. I can't buy this this is the single highest risk reward that I have access to in my lifetime. Probably that I will ever until
and
I'm
you
like
recognize
successful.
that pretty early then.
That was like the first thing I recognized when I got into crypto.
So were you trying to make angel investments before, or like were you thinking?
I was
about,
like in college. I'm like, oh my god, it was like
you're like
tech
watching
bubble
Shark
type.
Tank, like
yeah, like Shark Tank just started. It's like, how can I do this? And it's like you literally can't.
Yeah, I'm surprised
Like,
you can't.
You can't. Like you can't, right? Like,
you
you don't
don't
have that
have
choice.
couple $100,000 a year in income. Oh, you
No,
don't have
exactly.
$1 million.
But even
in
if you
assets?
do, you only get the bottom of the barrel, right? It's like there is no like. What's the best investment opportunity that like came to the masses? Like, I don't know, outside of crypto.
A lot of the IPOs is like go down too. It's like I
know,
and like
exactly.
that's the top.
Right, exactly. Like that's the top. I'm saying like you don't like Andreessen Horowitz and like Sequoia are not taking a college kid's money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're
Like,
not going to LP for
like,
Paradigm.
That's what I'm saying. Like you don't have access to the. So when I bought Bitcoin for the first time, I'm like, this is by far the best risk reward adjusted thing that I can ever buy. If I want the upside, if I want to shoot for the moon, there's no better chance that I'll have ever.
And then you found shit coins.
And then I found so I did not like I didn't go crazy in shit coins. Like I was like,
You didn't lose your ass trading your first year.
I never took more than. So I'm like a Bitcoin ETH holder,
Yeah.
and like 15% outside of that.
Okay, so very conservative.
Yeah,
like
very conservative. I've missed like a lot of gains.
Yeah, but you sleep well at night.
But I sleep well, exactly, except for that March day.
Yeah.
You know, nobody slept well. But no, like I think that's why I love DeFi, and that's why I think the struggles are where it's like I don't think every other use case needs to follow that path because it's not like the path to success for NFTs is not, in my opinion, to try and be like the liquid JPEGs that you're trying to sell to the greater fool. It's like we got to figure out like a sustainable model where it's like loyalty programs becoming more efficient, right? Like all these different. And again, like I'm not talking about the stuff that you buy. Like the stuff you buy is art. You know what I mean? It's different.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely
Like-
stuff I buy that can be viewed as artistic that I try to hopefully make money on at some point.
Exactly,
And then
that's
there's a lot of
different,
stuff
right? But
that
that's like buying a painting, right? But
Yeah.
what the problem is that like we take like every NFT project as like buying a painting,
yeah.
and like maybe 1% of the collection should be thought of in that like mental model, I don't
And
know
the
if that-
rest is just a almost fungible, expendable floor token that has some liquidity on a marketplace. That we can
Yeah,
sell
but like
to.
you know, again, like community focused tokens is I think an interesting concept too, right? Like, you know, I'm not a big NFT collector, so like, my mental models could be off. But like when I think about like punks, I think about them as like I wouldn't call them like art, almost like historical art. It's like if you own a punk, it's like I was there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For a
It's-
lot of us, yeah, it was like,
you know, that's what it means, right? And like, you know, I feel like a punk is the kind of thing like if I could afford to, I would like buy because
That-
like I want to be like I was there. You know what I mean?
yes.
And it's like I think a lot of the other ones, the mental models are like, shouldn't be viewed that differently than like a golf club, country club.
Yeah, I mean, some of them you shouldn't treat differently than like an Olive Garden gift card. Like,
No, I know, but I'm saying like, no. My point is that like, so I agree with you on
Yeah.
that. But my point is like,
I know what
a
you mean.
golf country club membership is an expensive thing, but you don't view it as a piece of art on your wall.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Where
Yeah.
it's like, you know, it's like punks is a thing you put on your wall, like our fidenzas, right?
Yes.
Like these are things that it's like, okay, that could be in 50 years, I think, the hallmark of our generation,
Yes.
right? Like, you know, you have Impressionism, you have all these different art forms. It could be like fidenzas, right? Or like squiggles, whatever, right? It's not going to be most of these collections. So the mental model like doesn't have to be that they're worthless. The mental model can be like, it's an expensive thing like a golf membership club. And that's fine, but no one trades their golf membership club. They cherish their golf membership club.
they don't list.
Do you see what I'm
They
saying?
don't go to the country
Yeah, they're not
club,
looking to flip it.
They're not looking
buy
to
the
flip
membership.
it. They
and
want it.
Post
but,
on OpenSea for 20%
but what's
markup.
happening now is like people don't like treat the golf membership like these NFTs as like a community anymore, and like they're getting, and that's why like as meme coins come back, like all these NFTs go down because like wait, if we're gonna all just treat these things like trading instruments, like ERC20s are way better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, why would I do this? Right? It's way worse.
And then people are now like happily paying taxes on ERC20s. Like
Yeah.
people who were anti-royalty on NFTs.
Paying 5% in and out tax.
Yes, like then they buy a token that's taking 5% each way, and it's like,
Yeah.
didn't you just like
Ruin the industry for this.
hate
Yeah.
NFT royalties? But now you're showing, and it was similar with Friend Tech. It's like, oh, people are willing to pay like.
I think the big thing there was really more so like once it's pretty much enforceable, where it's like it's really inconvenient to get around it. Then everyone's like, "Fuck it, I'll just pay."
Yeah, like
5%,
you're talking about at the
whatever."
app level, baking it in. It's like people are going to use a Nova chain where the royalty is
Yeah.
not on ETH, but
Right.
it is baked into whatever code they're doing, and it's like the creator has to get it.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff are you really excited about? Maybe not for like the next year, but in the next like 2 or 3 years, as you know, it doesn't have to be Arbitrum focused stuff.
Yeah.
But like what kind of stuff in crypto are you seeing that like you're super pumped about?
Yeah, so by the way, we haven't spoken about Arbitrum stuff in like this is general. This is
Yeah,
not even
yeah.
Arbitrum stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like all these things. I still think we've moved on from like the DeFi meta narrative, but like I think it's the most killer narrative, right? The thing that holds DeFi back is the regulatory limitations of like, all right, what can we do with non-crypto assets? Like
Like the real world.
can we
asset.
get commodities? Can we get stock equities? Like, how do we get that on this? Right. And like, honestly, like, if we ever do that, like, that is $1 trillion like thing that's just sitting there. Because if you think about like, even just like for example, right? Like, you know, I assume you don't like give, like, if you, do either of you guys even own stocks? Like,
Yeah, I own 7% of my net worth in equities.
okay, there you go. So,
I do not.
so do you like, I assume you don't give them to like short sellers and stuff. You just hold them, right?
No,
But it's like, it's like,
basically all like S&P tracked funds.
yeah, right. But it's like not like capital efficient, right? Like imagine if you could LP it,
Yeah.
right, into like an AMM pool, right? Like,
If I could take my 7% of my net worth that's in bonds and 7% that's in stocks and then put that in LP.
yeah, and having
A stock bond.
yeah, exactly, right?
It's
Like,
like-
it'd be pretty cool if we can do these things. You can't do any of these things today, right? So, I am still extremely excited about DeFi, and I feel like I'm the only person left in crypto that is. You know what I mean?
Dude,
Like,
you would love Benny. Benny is always on real world assets too. Like that's his shit.
so I think that some of the real world asset stuff, I'm actually going to counter that. Like, we're getting way ahead of ourselves with real world assets. Don't tell you.
Don't put the real estate on the chain.
First of all, that was like my big thing. Is I used to be the real estate lawyer guy, and I'm like, title insurance. How can we do that? It's the most inefficient thing in the world. And now I'm like, all right, that makes no sense. It's never going to happen. But it's like I'll tell you why the real world asset stuff, the treasuries, like, I'm not fully there yet. And the reason, like, equities, I'm much more there than treasuries, which is like, if I want to buy treasuries, it's kind of like I just want to save my money, right? Like, I'm not buying treasuries to like do anything other than save my money.
Yeah, no.
And it's like, why would I take smart contract risk on this right now? You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like the benefits to me don't outweigh the smart contract.
Well, you can
I feel like it makes
literally-
more sense for like MakerDAO, like the way that
Yeah,
they're doing it.
yeah, but they hold them all off chain.
Exactly, because it's like you are instead like you get exposure to that through MakerDAO.
Exactly,
and
and
then
they
let
hold
the DAO
everything
handle all
regulated.
that.
They hold everything through regulated custodians, and that's I
Yeah.
think way more interesting. It's obviously not as crypto native, but I think like we haven't embraced like that hybrid a little bit. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
And there's part of me too, like instead of like, say I'm just throwing a number out there. I'm like, okay, I need $500,000 this year. Like I might have 250,000 of that, not actually in treasury bills, but in like USDT on a lending platform. And I'm just using it as collateral, but I'm not even borrowing against it. I'm just like supplying it to get some back because like that yields better than treasuries. But it's also,
Yeah, but that's the thing. The thing I don't understand, and I wonder if this will ever correct, is like, and I think this is all of this is also actually legal driven, is like, how has there been no competition in the stablecoin space to give retail back some of the treasuries? Like if you hold USDT, like Tether's just cashing in 4%.
yes.
If you hold USDC, like Circle's cashing in 4%, right? So I'm surprised there hasn't been like a race to the floor with everything.
Yeah.
Everything in crypto has a race to the floor.
It's like the
except giving back
gentleman's
stablecoin
agreement
yield.
in it.
Exactly.
Like,
'cause it's probably because of like a duopoly, essentially, right?
it's like, well, we both benefit really
exactly
well
right.
from
It's
this
a
nice.
duopoly problem, right? So, like, I feel like that will change eventually, where it's like more of the yield is going to go back to
Yeah.
the user, but it doesn't mean I want to bring it all on chain. It's like if you figure out a way that like I can like redeem it and like get it when you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's like off chain ways. And also, like, I think the people who like have meaningful capital to deploy for art, like for treasuries and stuff, like they really don't want to touch smart contract risk, right? So it's like, it's almost like solving a problem for like a clientele that's not there yet.
Yeah.
I do think ultimately like real world assets is going to be a good important thing because again, like I was saying, like all this stuff about like equities gets me really excited. It's just like kind of feels like we're jumping the gun a little bit with like, all right, there's actually like the Venn diagram of people who want to own treasuries on a blockchain and have enough money that like is like no
That it
people.
moves the needle?
It's no people.
Yeah, they're like over here.
There's no people there.
It's like me. I'm like I got 50 grand in treasuries.
Right.
There's no like fucking BlackRock with the
Right, it's
treasury.
like you have like all the treasury people here and all the on-chain people here, and it's like there's nobody that overlaps that they got more than $1 million to their name.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
like in the entire
Like, who are
world.
you building for?
Right,
You
who are you building for?
have
here,
7
right?
mil TVL.
Yeah, so exactly. So like we'll get there. I don't think we're there yet. But so all right, so DeFi I'm excited about, and that's like the limitation. I think games with just like the efficiency of like just being able to trade skins is just like such an obvious thing.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how nobody's cracked this yet. I
Yeah.
don't get it.
Been saying it for a
I
couple
think
years.
the issue is your game has to actually be good.
I know, but how has there not been a good game?
It takes so much time. It's
But
like
everybody keeps saying that, but we've been saying that for like so. And I understand that. I feel like this is going to come across as like insensitive to gaming builders, and I'm not like I love my gaming builders, but like like there's people who've been building games since like 2018,
Yeah.
and it's like we've seen this like play out a little bit with like the Beacon, for example. I don't know if you guys played the Beacon on Arbitrum, but like people like that alpha version of the game, and like they sold a lot, and it's like I'm surprised there isn't somebody who has done this yet. And I feel like when I read these like end of year predictions or like beginning of year predictions, like for the last 3 years, people have been saying like this is the year that's going to be that game. It's almost like I don't understand how it shocks me that it hasn't happened yet. I'm like, I'm trying to be extremely respectful to the gaming builders. Like that stuff is really hard to do. I just don't get how it hasn't happened. It's
Yeah.
almost like at a certain, like if it doesn't happen this year, are we going to be like next year the same thing, or is it going to be like when is it going to be like okay maybe
2027. If we don't have it by 2027,
okay it's 2027.
I don't know.
And then by then it's 2030.
No, we got to set a date where it's like and again, it's not a criticism. It's like maybe we need to recalibrate. It's like, are we missing something?
Yeah.
It could be that like the overlap of like the number of people that are gaming developers that also are passionate about crypto, like they just are like optimized more for a niche. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, or like blockchain scaling is like insufficient for like their needs. Like my point is like at a certain point, it's not that like we have to criticize the gaming builders for not building fun games. We got to see if there's like a different symptom that's like explaining this,
yes.
right? Because like there's a lot of money that's gone into gaming. There's a
Oh,
lot
like
of really
billions,
good,
billions.
Yeah, and it's like, how have we not had League of Legends with tradable skins yet? How
right? It's like there's a lot like a lot of like really good builders.
League of Legends was a Dota mod.
Yeah.
It's like
Like there's a lot of really good builders. So like I happen to think that like it could be that like blockchain scaling might be a limitation for them. But again, like maybe we move more off chain and we have only like NFT marketplaces on chain. what I want to do is anyways, that's like to me is like such an and I'm not even a gamer. Like I haven't been a gamer since Sega Genesis, basically. Like Sonic the Hedgehog was my jam. NHL '94 was like me all day. I'll be honest, like I'm not a major gamer.
I feel like that is kind of a problem in the crypto space in general. It's like we keep saying we want these games, but I don't think a lot of us like play those amount of games anymore. It's like it has to be something.
I only think so. Again, I only care about this from like a blockchain technology perspective, right? Like what I mean by that is like I'm not a gamer, but the thing about blockchain technology that excites me is that like how is this intuitively for games not like a massive unlock? We have people on our team who like love gaming. Like they're the ones who like handle like talking to the gaming teams and stuff, right? So like they have, but like it's just like to me is like in terms of like an intuitive idea, it's like if I can resell something, my ability, like my willingness to pay for it should be like orders higher.
Yeah.
I don't get it. So anyways.
I mean, I spent all my time playing games. That's how I learned how to trade NFTs. Like my life growing up, I spent a lot of time trading items in games. Couldn't take them out of the games. That was actually an intro to crypto that I ignored because people were either taking PayPal or Bitcoin for the in-game items because you couldn't cash out. And I just intuitively was like, well, why couldn't I just take my item with me like out of this game? Like I spent 350 days of my life getting this cape. And like I haven't logged in 4 years to look at it. And it's like I spent so much time getting it. Why can't I take it with me? And there's a lot of stuff like that. Like growing up, like I just spent a bunch of time grinding shit. New game came out. It's like, oh, well, like all those things are worthless.
Right.
And
no, it's true.
Here, there hasn't been a game that I want to grind as much. Like I'm kind of bullish on this like AI gaming meme where it's like maybe it's more of a passive game where you have an AI agent, you tweak some inputs, they play the game for you. You can tweak, AI
Arena on Arbitrum. Have you seen that?
No.
People really like that one.
It's not very similar. Like you have a agent. It's a little passive.
They've integrated like a whole bunch of AI stuff into like your battle.
I need to check that out. Yeah, I think like those are the type of games that as I get older, like in my 30s now, I'm more looking forward to like a passive game, like
Cookie Clicker with AI.
Yeah, like I fucking
Do you like Tamagotchi?
No.
I'm kidding.
But I liked Cookie Clicker.
Yeah.
Like as dumb as that is, it was just
right, dude. I'll be honest. I love Candy Crush.
Yeah, just the match threes.
Like, they when you turn on Candy Crush, it always just like takes off your stress, and it's like that is 100%.
Surprised there's not like a match three crypto game. Like it's just
like again, like I don't know if there's a crypto element in Candy Crush that it's like I need it, but like when it's like I just worked.
If only this was on chain.
I don't feel like that's only if only that was on chain. Like for me, like this is great off chain, right? Like at 2 a.m. before I had a long day, I just need to swipe like this, and I'm good.
How long is a normal Candy Crush gaming session?
3 minutes.
Oh, really? It's just I don't think I've ever actually played Candy Crush.
I'm addicted.
I did like back in like high school.
I've been blowing it off. Like it shows up pre-installed on your Windows computer. Like get the fuck out of here. Like I don't want to see this.
No, but all right. So other things that I'm excited about. And this one's gonna be a weird one. I just think that like the amount of data that are available on chain around wallets, like, can really change if we ever figure out the way to like merge your off-chain and on-chain identities, and again in a way that doesn't like compromise your pseudonymity or anything.
The way the government doesn't
in the way that whatever, like ZK cryptography, like whatever it is, right? Like if we can ever do that, like the amount of like preference data that can like be collected is like such a, I think, more interesting way of like building advertising models. Right? It's like right now it's like in order to like get that level of knowledge, like people just like pay your social media players for you, and it's like you get nothing of it. But like when you think about like the interaction between like airdrops and like that, like you can actually think about a world where it's like growth strategies can meet really good users in a way that benefits really good users in a really interesting way.
So like you're saying maybe theoretically, you're looking at a wallet address tied to identity. They've received 10 airdrops for governance tokens, and they've hold all 10. They've participated in the DAOs, and they might be in like a green pile And then you have another person who's received 10 airdrops and like they've sold all theirs on day one.
Yeah, that people are already doing, right? Because you don't need to like bring on-chain data for that, off-chain data for that. Because
Because you can just take your wallet address.
I'm talking about like, for example, if I wanted to like launch like an Uber competitor, right? And it's like, if I had a way of like knowing what airdrop, well, again, this is a stupid thing. Like nobody should ever put Uber on a blockchain. I want to be very clear, right? Don't do that. But my point is, let's say I wanted that, and that's like, how do I have a way of identifying like who is the optimal customer or user of Uber, and like airdrop them their wallet on a blockchain? Like that is like really interesting to me, right? Because like if I can ever merge these things, I can have much better customer acquisition. Or if it's like, you know, I want to like launch this game, and it's like, all right, these are the 5 games that I think are most similar and the most likely, and I can track all of these wallets. Right? Again, this is an on-chain component. It's not an off-chain component.
Yeah.
But like, all right, I can build a user base through this, but like the problem is right now is like no one really knows. Like, did I just airdrop the same person 10 times? Right? Like you don't know. And that's part of the problem with like everything being only on chain without the off chain components. And that's why I was saying like, if we can ever merge these worlds, I think that's like really interesting because it's like,
That's Andy's 10 wallets.
right, exactly. It might be like the same, like because everything's so financialized where it's like, I need off chain.
When everybody knows that game now, it's like, oh, you're
I'm
not
staking-
sibylling 6 blockchains? Like, are you an idiot?
Right.
Yeah,
He's like, no, I'm
this is totally a joke. Don't listen to me. Like I have 50 wallets staking TIA right now for any airdrops to TIA stakers because
Right.
it's like, yeah, obviously I will do that. And like, especially once you start putting cutoffs of how much you can get per wallet and stuff, it's like, I will then choose the version which gets me the most TIA or any future airdrop as possible.
And meanwhile, I'm in the other camp where I'm like, okay, I'm going to put half of my TIA staked in this wallet, and then I'm going to leave the other half unstaked in this other wallet. And like,
I'm like you. I just don't have the patience. But there's some people who like, you can, honestly, like you can make a fortune if you do this. It's like,
that could be your only job.
literally.
And you don't even need to, you need to be right like once a year.
Yeah.
Like you can take 100 shots on 100 different things. And like if one of them is like Jito, it's like,
on the Arbitrum airdrop, we spent so long on sybill stuff.
what stuff did you look for to like try to counteract it?
So we did a lot of interesting things. So we created like a pretty comparatively, it turns out it was still a lot of money, but like comparatively like a low ceiling on max per wallet. But we built a point system where it was like a hybrid of like number of transactions you did, liquidity you provided, duration of time in between transactions. So that was like all of the positives. And then we built the list of negatives where it's like, okay, if this is your user flow, you're likely to be a bot, right? And it was things like, I don't want to share all of them because it's like secrets that I don't want to
for sure.
give to others.
You
but
don't
like,
want to give, you don't want to make
I don't want to make the airdrop people go around, but like, for example, like user patterns of like we call them parent-child relationships where it's like you have one
wallet seeding a bunch.
And then you have one wallet seeding 25, right? So it's like, okay, if you had one wallet seeding 25 wallets, you like, we collapsed those into one and we only gave the parent the maximum points for all of the children combined, right? And then all the children got no points.
Nice.
Right? And it was like stuff like that. But then like, or it's like if you on-ramped and off-ramped from what we identified as an exchange wallet many times, because a lot of people use the exchanges for off-ramping and off-ramping into new wallets as like they're to try and get around
the parent-child
problem.
Yeah, they're like, oh, well, they can't tell it's from Coinbase 10.
Exactly, right? So now it's like, okay, why would you transact with Coinbase 300 times? That's a lot, right? Like, why are you bringing like $100 300 times in and out? It must be that your other address is probably like something that we can't re-identify, so you get minus.
Yeah.
Right? So we did a whole bunch of that. But we did one thing that was interesting, which is like we didn't disqualify you if you were identified as a sybill. So if you got like a certain number of points, then you were identified as a sybill. But what we did was sybill still got something. And like this goes back to like that.
They got coal. They got Arbitrum coal.
No, they got like just like way less than they otherwise would have. So what happened was it was like I think you got like -5 points. So like if you got under 3 points, so if you had 8 points, you got 3 points. If you had 7 points, you got 2 points, right? If you got less than 3 points, your wallet got nothing. But if you had like 10 points, for example, you went to 5 points, you went from like 10,000 tokens to like 1,200 tokens or something. But like, it's a game you're playing with a sybill where it's like, all right, like I don't know for sure if it's a false positive or not. So like, let's just have like a mutual handshake where we won't like fight.
Yeah, like there could be somebody.
It's possible. Like let's just so like it was
And did you find that like the effects afterwards were what you intended? Like, did you see the patterns you would hope to see from the users who got the airdrops?
I didn't really check
Okay.
like in terms of like how much people sold because I don't.
Oh yeah, I meant.
Yeah, at
I
that
meant
point, the cat's out of the bag.
I
whatever
meant
happens,
more like
happens.
just like comments around like in like
People were a little annoyed when like they got dinged as sybils, but they would have been way more annoyed if they got 0.
oh yeah.
Right, like that's like way more like you know what I mean.
I feel like it's a really important thing to do. Like the distribution of your token is.
Yeah, so the DAO airdrop had some wrinkles too, but I think that was really interesting. The thing that surprised me post token, to be honest, is I was shocked how well the liquidity on the system held up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I probably thought there was more mercenary capital than there was because, like, if you just look at ETH, like, because I think that's the most important asset in terms of like liquidity, right? Like, I don't care how many meaning I'm not going to put like the uni token liquidity on Arbitrum as the ETH token liquidity on Arbitrum is like the same thing, right? Because most uni tokens should live on L1, like that makes sense. That's what the token is, right? So ETH, bridged ETH. The if you take like the 6 months before the token and like the 6 months after the token, like the rate of in net inflows actually went up, which like intuitively makes most sense if you think that there's a lot of airdrop farmers. So like that really surprised me because like Arbitrum, I think at the airdrop had about 720,000 ETH over the bridge.
Okay.
We're over 1.4 million now. Like for some context, like that's the 5th largest. It's like the staking contract, WETH. Let's just put both of those aside. They don't really count.
Yeah.
Binance, Kraken, Robinhood, Arbitrum Bridge. And like after Arbitrum Bridge is like at 1.4 million. The next is like the bridge to BSC. And that's like 500,000. So like
Half.
less
Not
than
less
half,
than
like a
half.
third basically. And like I think probably more pessimistic that our trajectory would fall back than like the rate of increase. Like, since January 1st, I just submit on our team, we looked at the metrics today, 78,000 ETH crossed the bridge into Arbitrum since January 1st. That's like $200 million worth of ETH. That's net. Like maybe it was like 100 in and 22 out, but like net 78,000 ETH in.
That's right.
It's a crazy number.
I think
And
it goes
like,
back though to like you being like that from more the technical lens. Like I think people are more comfortable sending large amounts of money to Arbitrum. Like I don't sweat $50,000 or $100,000 across the bridge. I don't sweat throwing it in a state. Like I just don't really think about it. Whereas like some other stuff I do, I'm like, oh shit, like what am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also there's like we've talked about a lot, there's actual genuine stuff to do there.
Right.
Whereas like, not to throw stones at other channels, I won't name names, I guess, but we all know like there's other L2s where maybe there's like one project that people care about, but there's really not much else going on. Whereas like there are, times, like I've had many times where I'm like just naturally in whatever I am doing, like, oh, I guess I got a bridge to Arbitrum now because that's just like the thing that I want to do is on Arbitrum.
Right.
And like that really only for me, at least like right now, is happening on like Arbitrum and Solana as far as bridging from mainnet.
yeah, and I think
Yeah, I have a really small amount on base that I degen gamble with, and that's it.
Yeah. I own
it's so
Toshi.
interesting like that's your narrative for base. It's like you like
It's a game. There's one game
really?
called Cambria.
Is it good?
They took the RuneScape dual arena experience. They have like the RuneScape combat, which is like tick or turn based, but essentially you're basically doing like 50-50 coin flips with a 3% rake to farm a future airdrop. So it's like, coin flipping 0.1 to 0.5 ETH. And I've done like 800 battles. I'm like 4th on the leaderboard.
Right.
And like I've just grinded the shit out of it. I'm like a, drunk person in a slot machine just hitting the button. It's like that. It's not, I'm really like, I think the only other thing I bought on base is the parallel cards. Because I've been following parallel and it was like, oh, they did this like pack thing where I could buy starter packs. And then it actually worked really well with their game. Like it just, my account has my wallet.
They've been killing it. I've got a lot of respect for those guys.
I'm not a card game player. Like Andy's a smart like team fight tactics player, which is like this auto chess, but like I'm not the tactics strategy type. So like the card games, I burn out really quick because I just realize like I'm not thinking like, oh, what's my optimal first hand and like what is my optimal play style. I'm just like, ah, fuck it, like throw this card out, and then like I'm just capped at like, it's not my game.
Right.
So I quickly like put it down. But other than that, like I don't know what the narrative is. Like
I think they've got a really strong narrative for like retail focused apps that like is just, again, it takes so long to build that out, right? I actually thought the base go to market in July was probably the most well executed.
yeah, they had like a new day or a new every week. It was like, oh, here's this thing that's going live, this thing that's going live, and it was like the base summer or whatever.
What was it called? On-chain summer?
On-chain summer.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, and like again, I actually told this to Jesse once. I'm like, you can plan this shit all you want, and it's like, it was like friend tech. You know what I mean? It was friend tech and bold was the narrative. So again, you got to stick to your vision, your plan of what they want. And I think like they want a very retail focused thing, which makes sense. I think, which is cool.
With
for
the
them.
under the Coinbase thing, it's like, I don't know, normie. Is that like the word?
What do you
Or,
mean?
Like base being, when I think base, I think of Coinbase, and then I think of
Right.
like normie friendly, like super like retail, like you said. Like
yeah,
just-
and I think that's what they're trying to go for is like an optimal.
but like the super chain idea confuses me. Like when I hear it, I'm like, wait, base isn't optimism, like, but it's part of optimism. I'm like, okay, I'm just
yeah,
using base.
I think a lot of that is like
my usage of optimism was like, oh, I got an airdrop.
right.
Cool. Okay, now I don't have any governance responsibilities. Cool. I love,
Right.
decentralized technology, but I didn't like use their chain after I got the airdrop. It was like I was on a multi-sig, so they gave me some tokens. I forget what they did, but and they even made you go through. I remember the claim was like a little painful. Like they made you go through the governance thing.
You had to like delegate to someone or something.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I see, but like, and it's gone. So like that's, I don't know. It's tough in this space to incentivize.
I think the super chain thing for them is probably like, again, going back to sustainability, right? So like they've got a deal with Coinbase where Coinbase gives them back some sequencer revenue. Again, whether that's a good deal, they obviously paid Coinbase for that, right? So like, who knows? But again, I think I take your point, which is like, Coinbase is the retail focused brand. Like that's what you're thinking about it, right? And
yeah. I mean, when I think Coinbase, I immediately think like high fees, obscured from the users. Like every normie I onboard, if they use Coinbase, I'm like, please, for the love of God, like make sure you're using the advanced section.
I don't understand. Can we talk about that for a second?
Let's go.
I went to I went to Coinbase and I was like, why do they both? You just click a toggle between advanced and pro, but it's like half the price. And
Yes.
it's like, how like is that like? Are you like? Is it hundreds of dollars to like arbitrage if you know how to press a button or not?
It's
is that
literally like if you're buying $1,000 worth of crypto, you're paying like multiples of the fee on the retail app versus using advanced. Like advanced, I don't know. Let's just say it's like $4. Like the fee on the
I know, but it's just a toggle. It's not even like complicated. It's not.
Yeah,
like,
and I think
or
it
it's
was-
not a minimum amount. It's just a toggle.
It's just you need to know, and like most people don't know. They're like, "Oh, I'm not advanced," which means I pay more in fees because I'm calling myself not advanced, but I'm basic.
So I never really pulled money out of crypto until we bought a house
Uh-huh.
like 2.5 years ago, and then I had to like pull a lot of money out of crypto. Again, because banks don't give mortgages to crypto people.
Yes.
So like, my mortgage is like 40% LTV, and like I had to put down the rest as like a down payment, which was like awful. But I remember withdrawing, like trying to withdraw and just sell on Coinbase, and I'm just like, wait, like what? Then I'm like sending it to like Uniswap and trying to like get it into USDC to get it better, and I'm like, this whole thing is great. And then I'm like, wait, I'm saving thousands of dollars.
You're
by just
literally
going
probably
to
like saving
advanced.
like $10,000.
I saved
on,
probably like $10,000 by just toggling to the advanced function. It's crazy.
It should be illegal. That like, I've tried to tell so many friends. Like I've had friends who've been like, "Oh yeah, I just been buying it on Coinbase for the last year," and I'm like, "Have you been using Coinbase Pro?" And they're like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, dude." And yeah, it's like executing like a liquidity strategy to get out of the market is a pain in the ass. I got lucky. I like withdrew all my shit in 2021 through FTX. And then like a few weeks
You
later,
literally got lucky, you know?
well, before that, I had all that money in UST on Anchor. Like I dodged two completely like life-changing events that would have completely fucked me just because of like dumb luck and like a little bit of paranoia and being
What's crazy, I never had money on FTX or Anchor.
yeah. Dude, there was a
That's just
point
me,
where
like, they came on the scene when I was already like out of the DGen game.
I'm pretty sure there were companies that were coming up that would like pitch to startups who raised money like, hey, we'll take your money and like we'll give you 15% APY.
Oh.
And then they would just take it.
There
put it
were
in Anchor,
literally like people doing this to like retail. Like
and they lost.
this was the strategy. It was like, let's build a retail front end for Anchor.
Yeah.
I remember trying to tell like I met this wealth manager and I'm like, yeah, I don't know why I would want treasuries, dude. Like we can get 19%.
Can we all do our wealth manager friend stories? Like I'm sure everybody got the guy they went to college with, who's now a wealth manager who tries to like get you to use their thing, and it's like when you tell them you're in crypto, like how quickly those conversations devolve. It's literally my favorite
They're
thing
like,
in the
bro,
world.
I could save you, and it's like, no.
Like I have a friend who like works at Northwestern Mutual. I think that's what it's called. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I know.
I think
what you're
maybe
talking
it's
about.
Northwest Mutual.
I don't know.
Northwest. Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever. What's it called?
I mean, Northwestern. Is it like a lion?
Yeah. Northwestern, right? Like life insurance and stuff. All right. So, and he's just like giving me this whole strategy of like a bond diversification over time. I'm like, dude, do you know where my money is right now? Like, we are so far from this.
Here's the bond. Here's
like,
me.
He's exactly. It's that Venn diagram again, right? It's like you should probably try selling me on like triple levered like oil ETFs if you want me to be safe. You know what I mean?
What if you were leverage long gasoline?
It's like that's probably more on my risk appetite right now.
Yeah.
If I want it to be conservative, than your 1%, policies. Oh my god! And just conversations just end. It's just so funny. I feel like everybody has that friend who's just like trying to sell diversification to crypto degens, and it's like I should, but I won't.
No, so what I always say is my diversification. I think all of us are in this boat. My diversification was buying a house. That's like I diversified. I bought property.
With less leverage. I have very little leverage because I couldn't get leverage on my house. I don't know about you guys.
We got our place while I was still working, and
so
I had W-2, and I only put 25% down.
Okay, so then you did okay.
And then we got it.
And your mortgage is probably like 2 point something.
No,
3%
well, so
or
our first house is like 2.6 or whatever, but our second place is 5.99. So it's definitely a little like
Pain.
It's different. I mean, the new one's more than double the old one,
Right.
but we still have the old place. And
Okay.
we've went back and forth on like selling it, renting it. The property value has actually went up like.
Yeah, but at 2.6%, you're getting free money. You can't even sell it.
So that's why we can't sell it.
You can't
It's
sell it. It's free money.
There's this idea that if rates go back down, like the property value in that area, because it's getting gentrified and stuff, it could be up 50%.
Right.
And if rates go down to like 4 or 3, it's like, okay, we can get rid of it. But until then, we're able to, the houses in our neighborhood are like renting for way more than our mortgages. So it's like, okay, we just have to do it.
Right, exactly.
It's a whole.
Yeah.
Were you able to get it?
No leverage on mine.
No leverage on your house at all.
Yeah. Well, so I think this was like founder. My wife also started her own
Founder.
thing, and so like we both like I was W-2'd, but it was my own thing. And
Right. They ding you for
yeah,
that.
they don't care. And so it was like it got to the point, and so like the place that I was getting to is also a new development, and like they don't really like doing mortgages for those because of who the fuck knows. And so it was just like all these different things.
They want their money ASAP.
Yeah, and it was like we were talking to our real estate agent about it, and he was like, "If you guys want to get a mortgage, you can, but like honestly, it's going to be really annoying. And if you really want to take out money against the house, just like take out like a home equity loan later or
Right.
something." Never have, but and like it felt bad to take out enough crypto to buy the place.
It's
It
painful.
felt pretty bad, but like. It at least then I feel good. Like it's my good diversification, no leverage.
Now the point is, if you need cash, allow leverage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had the same thing, so it's really funny. So I went down the same journey. So my wife lost her job when we bought our house, and we got our daughter. It was a crazy time.
1-2.
And I lost 70% of my W-2 income. So we were down as like a net family income, like we were down like 85, 90%. Like, like very, very.
Switch tax brackets.
Like, yes, like very much, right? So there's like 2 districts like where we live, and like one is like super high taxes because like the public school systems are like really, really good. And like that means like the housing prices are like much lower because of that. And the other one is like much higher price houses, but like the taxes are like a third of the other district, right? So we were looking at a house in each, and like I called the mortgage guy, and like we really like the house in like the high tax one, right? But my issue was like coming up with a down payment, and like I knew I'd make my yearly tax payments because like I know I'm good for it. I just don't want to pay a lot up front, right? He's like, you don't qualify for a mortgage in the high tax. He's like, your monthly bill on these taxes is too high, where it's like we wouldn't give you any money for a mortgage because that's what they check what your monthlies are, right? You know what I mean? So he's like, yeah, you can't take on any mortgage.
They're looking at your cash flow.
He's like, you can't take on any mortgage because you're like negative once you hit the property taxes. I'm like, all right, low property tax district. But then when we got there, I'm like, okay, I qualified for like a 40%. You know, I had to put down 60% basically.
It's steep,
right? Which is really steep.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, should I? And this is exactly the end. I'm like, should I just put it into Aave and get USDC? Or should I sell it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to take on even more leverage by putting it into Aave. I'm just going to sell. I'm going to do this the only time.
In hindsight, was that the better move? Because it was like ETH.
Yeah, it was in hindsight, it was pretty good. So I sold, ETH was at like 3.
Nice.
Okay, so I'm like,
So you would have got liquidated on your loan
probably
if you didn't add capital.
I would have
in the bear
had
market.
to add, like, yeah, I might have been
like-
I might have been fully liquidated. Like, you know.
And there's a point that goes through your head when you're on any of these lending platforms. Like, it's always in the back of your mind. Like, what if I got fucked? Like,
So I actually had a moment like that just the other day where right now I have a lot of my money on Solana. And I was like lucky. I was pretty early in the rotation from ETH to Solana stuff. And so I had like a pretty big, I was doing the whole leverage farm margin fi thing and all of that kind of stuff. And I like had a bunch on there. And then I like got tired of managing all these wallets, consolidated them all, took it out. But margin fi has the caps. And so I moved my like loans over to Solend. And I forgot that I did that. And then after the price had gone down on Solana from like 130 to like 90, I went to margin fi just to like check on how it was going. And I was like, where's my money? And I was like, did I get liquidated from the price drop? I was like, there's no way.
You're like Dave Portnoy on Gemini. Did you guys see that?
I was like,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I was
You're
like,
Dave Portnoy on Gemini.
I was borrowing
He's
some
some
money,
cash.
but like not that much. And I was like, and then I'm like, it must be like the RPCs are fucked up, and I'm refreshing, and I'm like, okay, that's not showing up. I thought this would fix it. I'm disconnecting my wallet, reconnect it. I'm like,
Is there like a debanked version on Solana?
Not
where it's like
really.
you can track everything?
not
Or like a zapper?
nothing that's any good.
So I've
and
been
so I'm like
using
trying to find the
Awaken.
account history.
yeah, Awaken's tax. Have
Oh,
you used
yeah?
Awaken at
No.
all?
I've used them actually.
It seems to be, now that Xerion killed their Solana support, it seems to be the best multi-chain.
Why'd they do that? Why did Xerion kill Solana? Like, is it just too hard to run?
Dude, they
Solana stuff?
literally tweeted at me 4 days before they killed Solana. Like, oh yeah, we're out of margin. Like, I was bitching, like, oh, I'd be sick if we had like margin fi and like Solend or, Jito marinade. And then they were like, it's probably social media in terms, was like, oh, we're working on that. And literally like 4 days later, my app updates. It's like, oh, I can't see my P&L. It's premium feature. Like, oh, my Solana wallets are gone.
So, can I tell you a funny Solana story? I haven't really told this publicly, but it's kind of funny. So obviously I'm an Arbitrum Maxi. Right?
Yeah.
But before I joined Offchain Labs, I dabbled, right? I bought Solana at $1.34.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, okay, I bought like, a couple grand worth of Solana at like $1.34. I'm like, I'm doing pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, but now it feels weird because I'm an Arbitrum Maxi. And I have an Arbitrum Maxi. I use like Ethereum. I'll use other chains. I don't really use Solana to be honest, but like, so what do I do with my Solana? I
Sell it.
No, you don't sell it because it's too much capital gains. I don't want to pay that capital gains. It's my charity. It's like these donor advised fund structures.
Okay.
They're sick. Like best thing in the world. So basically, what I did was, and this is when I bought the house to offset my capital gains on selling for the house. I donated a lot of my Solana at like $190 last bull. They liquidate it for you into cash. So you never have to pay capital gains.
So then it goes to charity.
And then what they do is they credit your account with the dollar version. They credit my account and I can give it in like increments of like whenever I want of cash donations,
But it's a entire write-off.
and it's an entire write-off.
That's a cheat code.
It's amazing if you ever crypto, like donor advised funds for crypto is like the best exit strategy if you want to give charity. But like this was like extra good for me because like I never had to pay the cap gains. They actually invest it, so like it's been growing, and it's like I give charity. Like it's 2 years later, I'm still giving the charity out, and I got to offset it against like this house purchase.
So do you get to write it off immediately?
I got to write it off in the same year because I donated it to a charity, and then they give me the tax credit according to the market price of Solana that day.
That's insane.
Can you send me more information about that on top?
Yeah, we need.
Yeah, it's a sick thing, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
It's like
You wanna do good.
everybody kind of wins. Like you're giving money to charity.
It's something that I've thought about that I've done a really bad job of is not more actively. This is my wife literally does crypto taxes. So like if you ever need a tax accountant, let me know. But
She's my
like,
accountant.
We'll chat.
oh yeah, because you said your wife is an accountant as well.
Yeah, but she doesn't do crypto
Yeah.
stuff. She's like,
But-
yeah.
She does like a lot of degens taxes. But I do a really bad job of my own stuff of tracking my cap gains for the year and offsetting that with charitable donations. And it's like, why am I paying taxes on this stuff when I can just donate money to charity?
Yeah,
and,
so
like,
I
it's the
never,
same
I
place?
don't give charity from dollars anymore. I donate Solana.
You
'cause
donate
that's-
something that's up.
No, but like this is so up. It's like I bought it at $1.34. My cost basis is free basically, and I don't want to like. First of all, I don't want to sell a Solana. I actually think Solana is like a really cool project. I'm really excited about it. But also like I probably don't want to speculate. So like
Probably more appropriately aligns incentives.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is my charity stuff right now.
Yes.
and it's
My
like.
semi-competitors doing well is actually helping me give more to charity.
Exactly.
And, like, I don't need.
And like that's been like my mental model for Solana, basically.
I love that.
For like the last 2 years, where it's like go Solana because it means I'm giving more charity. I've like earmarked all of it.
Heads I win, tails I don't lose.
Exactly. I've like earmarked all of it to like donate to charity over time, to match some of my like tax stuff, and then I give the charity out. The killer about the donor advised fund is that you don't have to give all the charity that year.
Away, yeah.
You can like give it over time. And
Is there a cap? Like if you donate, say you donate 100K to the fund, do you have to have spent that by a certain amount of time?
I've still got it in there, and like I've replenished a little bit, but like they don't care. The only thing is like they have like I think like a $25 minimum or something on like they
Oh
won't.
my God, $25 minimum?
No, on like donations, right? But like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Well,
fine.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's like whatever. But the point is that like I'm just trying to give it to the audience, right?
yeah, no, I like that. I
But
mean,
I'm fully on board with these.
'Cause
That's
I-
really cool.
Funds.
a lot of the charity stuff that I've done has been like USDC or ETH that I paid taxes on already.
Never give USDC as a charity.
Yeah,
Like,
that's-
it's a stable. Give it on the thing that you go up 100x.
Dude, just wait till we can start giving squiggles to museums.
Right? There you go. There you go.
I know. We need to. I feel like NFTs have totally missed the mark on the whole like art market arbitrage of donations.
Charity.
Right,
charitable
right.
donations.
I feel like it has happened a little bit with Kazomo and the LACMA. Like there had to have been a charitable thing there, and we've seen that with Pablo and Ryan Zurer giving Rafiq's piece to the MoMA, and there has been
Have they been getting charitable donations on this stuff? I assume so, right?
I would imagine so.
knowing those people and what they do. Like I would assume that
They're pretty money
they're very
savvy.
they're very capital efficient.
Yeah.
Like I'll say that. So I would assume if there was any way to be doing that, like
Right.
they would. But I don't see it very often.
No.
And yeah, maybe I haven't seen it too much with the punks outside of Kazomas, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah, it's definitely something that I like. Even outside of like the capital efficiency side of it, something that I want to try to be better about going forward is just like, being more charitable, things like that. That's cool. I definitely want to learn more about it.
My guess is crypto people are generally charitable.
they're like,
They
we
don't
got the
know
charity
how to-
water.
Yeah.
We did a whole thing for charity water, helped raise
Yeah.
a couple $10,000, like I don't know, 40 maybe.
Yeah. I
know
like charity water a lot.
but I
What
like
is
to.
that? What's charity water?
They basically drill wells in underprivileged places so that people can get clean drinking water. But I think to me, some of the most attractive things are like 98 or 99% of all funds that go to charity like actually go to drilling the wells and doing the thing, and then the other like 1 or 2% is their admin costs. But it's not like Susan G. Komen or one of the other big ones where it's like so much is not going to actual charity.
Right.
And then they do these like, I don't know what the exact name is, but it's almost like a proof of work report where they show you like this is the city we did this recent well in with your donation. Like these are the people in the village names.
Oh,
It's like
fantastic.
interviews with them.
Yeah, you get like very custom like emails basically of like, here's exactly how your contribution went to help people. Here's like the, like these were saying, exact city that it's in and all that kind of stuff, which is cool. I listened to a podcast with their founder on the Bill Simmons podcast back when I was like in college. And I was like, oh shit, like this is a charity that's like actually cool. And they seem like they actually care about what they're doing. And the guys seem really passionate about it. I've liked them for a long time. We have a mutual friend who does daily fantasy sports stuff. And he every year does like a really large like fundraising event for them.
Oh, right.
Calls it the Welly Maker.
Yeah.
Because he won the Millie Maker, which is like a millionaire. It's long story short, people put in $25 entries, $20 entries. You can win $1 million to first. And like 10 years ago, he won that like very early on.
What is it? The charity ran that, or
No.
is this like
So he's done well with fantasy sports.
Oh, okay.
And then, he's passionate about charity. But
I have a
he's
friend who hit a 12K parlay on like 6 hockey games last night.
a 12-leg parlay.
Like no, 12K, he won 12K
Oh,
on
okay.
like a $30 bet.
That's
nice.
awesome.
I'm just like,
There's DJs on crypto Twitter who are posting all sorts of shit. They're like taking, Dawson Knox first touchdown with like Noah Gray first touchdown with like fucking, I don't even know, Justin Watson first touchdown.
I feel
It's
like the people
of
who
course.
post these things though, it's like the bets are so random that there's 100 that lost, right?
Oh yeah.
And they never post those.
Yeah, never.
It's
This
just-
is why we need blockchains to
Well,
show all of the, right, Andy? There you
Yeah,
go.
exactly.
Andy's
gotta talk-
thing.
we were talking-
IKB.
we were
Right?
talking
Is
to,
that
Yeah.
IKB, right? Yeah.
we were talking today about like, the points leaderboard versus like ROI leaderboards. It's like-
Yeah, so we have like a point system that is just kind of tracks like volume and like daily play and all that. And we just started adding in like an ROI and like a total amount made. And we
I need this for my friends who posted in our
and my
group chats.
co-founder
Like
was like,
their 12K
he was
parlay
like, I
wins.
legitimately don't know if we should put these up because there's like 4 people who have made money and everyone else is negative. And so he was like, I think it's bad if we have this up right now.
like you got to make sure that you don't like tell the user like, hey man,
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want that. That's
So
too
we're
much transparency.
only going to show the pospositives.
Yeah.
So you can grind till you get
There's
positive.
only 4 people who are up.
And one of them is him.
Okay, there you go.
it's like, is the list bugged? And it's like, no.
No, it's not fun.
Are the RPCs down?
I think there's a mistake. I'm not on the list.
So,
Oh my God.
what do you, speaking of sports and stuff like that, do you have anything that outside of like the crypto world you're like either really passionate about or other than Candy Crush that you enjoy in your free time? And like what's kind of maybe not a Saturday because of religious
Right,
things, but
yeah.
what's a lazy Sunday at home?
Okay. So I have 2 kids now with one on the way. So that's like
Congratulations.
thank you.
That's
like,
exciting.
That's most of my like spare time. Like balancing like 2 kids under 5 and crypto stuff is like almost impossible. So kudos to like him and my wife who like does a lot of that, but that's a lot of my Sundays, just like hanging out with the family, and Saturdays too. But in terms of like fun stuff, I love to ski. So I went to Utah last month for like 48 hours. I met like my best friend who lives in LA. I landed at midnight. We skied the next morning. Then we skied the next day, and we caught like 6 o'clock flights back out. Where it was
it's
like,
crazy tight. Yeah.
yeah, like we don't have like too much going on. I don't have
Yeah.
time, but got 2 full days in at Park City, so that's fantastic. I'm a big hockey guy. I love hockey.
Oh, you said you're from Toronto originally?
Yeah, from Toronto. Absolutely love hockey. I feel like Blue Jackets fan.
I haven't ever been to a game, so I can't say I'm a fan.
Okay.
But like, I root for every Columbus team,
Okay,
just
there you go.
intrinsically.
Yeah, so always passionate. It's actually a fun story about me. I used to love like the economics of hockey, like negotiating like contracts and stuff. So I used to actually want to be a sports writer and a sports agent. Like that used to be my
Like
thing.
high school into college.
College.
Okay.
Even at college, right? So when I was in college, there was like a very like every sports team has this sort of thing. There's that one polarizing player on your team where it's like, all right, he's worth more to us than he is to everyone else because like we love him. You know what I'm talking about? You know, you know what I'm saying, right? So it's like, are you a Yankees fan?
No, I'm a Mets fan,
Oh,
actually.
okay. I was gonna say like the Derek Jeter effect.
Yeah.
Where he's like not actually that good, but like you can never
But
imagine him
the
as
fans need
He's
him.
good, but you know what I mean, right? But so we had this one guy named like Tyler Bozak on Toronto Maple Leafs. This is like 2013. He's up for a new contract, and everyone was like, "Don't overpay him. He sucks." And I'm like, actually, he's probably better than we think, right? So I'm like, I want to write like a whole article about this. So like I called the Toronto Star, which is like the big Toronto paper, and I just like cold called like the sports editor, and I'm just like, I got an article arguing that like Tyler Bozak's actually worth a lot more than the people think he is. And he's like, all right, you have 30 seconds to make the pitch. I'm like, okay. So I made him the pitch. He's like, all right, if you can get me 2,000 words by tomorrow, I'll publish it. I'm like, wait, what? Really?
It's that easy?
So how is this that easy? So I was up all night, like sending him this like probably really crappily written article and making the pitch that this guy's just worth way more. Here's like player comps, like analysis, like future, like growth in the salary cap, etc. And he calls me the next day. He's like, we like it. We're going to publish it. I need you to sign this thing where we can pay you $250 and like you have no rights to your IP anymore. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
$250. I'm in college and I get like my name in the paper. This is like a freaking.
You're paying me?
This is like,
It's like, I would have done this for free.
I'm like, I would have done this. He's like, I know you would have done this for free. We can't do that for free. We have to give you compensation. Otherwise, we have like I'm sure like I can sue them or something.
Yeah,
right?
something legal.
So he wants to make sure that I can sue, right? So I get I have no. He's like, you have no rights anymore. By the way, he's like, we are going to like, you have no more rights. I'm like, all right, let's do this, right? So they totally bastardized the article. They don't change it in the way that like changed the integrity of the article. They changed it in a way that like changed the tones. Like my tone was like very like cold. It was like objectively, this is what it should be. And they changed it to like, as a Leafs fan, this is why I think we should pay him also. You know what I mean? Because like that's
Made it more about the fandom than the stats.
Made it more like emotional versus like rational.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have like a big Twitter presence now. Like I'm kind of on crypto Twitter a little bit, but like I had no Twitter presence. I was like a lurker with like 12 followers, right? And they put this on the front page of the Toronto Star with a picture of me saying I'm an aspiring sport agent, like, and
They have your Twitter linked?
I don't remember if it had the Twitter link or someone found it.
Yeah.
Because they had the picture of me. It was the same as my Twitter profile. I got so much mail, like DMs, message, like, this is trash, like literally cursing me.
Go fuck yourself. You're the worst.
Literally, it's like, why do you think? And all of it was like, we shouldn't sign him. And like, my whole point was like, I never said we should sign him. I'm just saying like, this is the market price. Anyways, it was like the worst possible experience ever. And
you're
he
like,
ended
I don't want this.
He ended up like signing up for like basically around where I was at. And it's like, I nailed it. The Star calls me a week later. They're like, can you do it for 2 more players? Like the exact same thing for like 2
They were
more
like,
players.
it crushed. And you were like, no, everyone hates me.
They're like, I'm like, all right, fine.
Fine.
I'll do it. The other 2 players I literally knocked out of the park, right? Like one player I said is going to sign for like 8 years, 64.8 million. He got 8 years, 64 million. Like you can't, like that's spot on, right? And the only reason I said 64.8 is that his number was 81 and 64.8 divided by 8 is 8.1. So I thought he'd like be cute.
Yeah.
Otherwise I probably would have said like 65 or 64, right? So like I knocked the living daylights out of that one. And the other one I said was like going to sign for, I think I said 7 years, 7 million, and it was 5 years, 7 million. So like I was a little off, but like
Close.
right number, just wrong years. Again, the hate mail just like kept pouring, and they're like, you just want to be a sports agent. You're trying to make the players like really happy and like you, like you're ruining the team. And I'm just like,
You're ruining the team.
You're ruining the team. It's like,
I'm like, do you know who I am? I am like sitting in my dorm room in college,
so little influence. You have no idea.
literally like with 12 followers, trying to like pump this thing into like an article that like the Toronto Star might write. So after that, like I'm just like, I'm done. I'm done. But I love hockey.
Sports
I don't know
fans
how
are
we got
fucking
there, but I love hockey.
It had to have helped prepare you in some way for dealing with like crypto communities, like in a weird way, like seeing how sports fans react.
Maybe I just
It's just people, right? Like there's these tribes of people.
The thing about crypto is like there's more money on the line. And people, like, oh man, yeah, it's. So
Are you active in any of like the like Arbitrum like Discord communities and stuff? Or like how much so? What's that kind of world like? And I think how much, I'm sure it's very intentional, but how do you guys think about separating the comms of, off-chain and Arbitrum and making sure that people aren't conflating those things?
Yeah, we keep very separate. Like we've got our policies. Like I don't get involved personally in governance. I wish I could more, but like it gets complicated. We want the community to even if I don't have actual control, like I don't want the community to like just look to us. We want the community to be managing things. So we don't get involved formally in governance. The foundation does a little bit more, but even again, they try to like digest from the community more. Discord, obviously, like Twitter, but we try and keep the comms. Like at Offchain, like our vision is, we're obviously like fully aligned with the Arbitrum community. We want to build Arbitrum technology, but like it's different, and I think like we're trying to build a business on top of what we're doing, right? Like we support Prism, we're contributing to other projects like Psi, we're contributing to like the Espresso Sequencer project, like.
I didn't know you guys are contributing to
we're becoming core contributors to Espresso. Like we were building shared sequencing technology.
Yeah.
And then we're like, wait, if we build shared sequencing technology, the only people who are going to use it is Arbitrum. And that's like not great UX for like crypto. Like if we contribute to a third party's effort, like maybe if it's good, everyone will use it. So like we want to like continue to make impact, right? Like for example, Prism, right? There's no maximalism around Prism. Like everyone uses Prism.
Everyone loves Prism, yeah.
Right? It's not like, oh, Offchain Labs runs Prism, so like if we don't like Arbitrum, we like OP or something, like we're not going to use Prism. So we're trying to like continue to replicate that. It's like
there was a bit of a few people when you guys acquired them originally.
I know.
I would get into arguments with. I was like, you guys are fucking idiots if you think that they're going to somehow mess up Prism to make it like Arbitrum.
Forget me. Like if you know like anything about Preston and Terrence and like Raul and like
that was my thing. It was like it's disrespectful to them to think that they would do that.
They would like the whole like when Prism joined our team, like the whole thing was like, all right, let's let Preston and Raul cook. You know what I mean? Like they don't want to deal with HR and operations and grants and fundraising. Like let's let them cook and let's bring all that into us for them to be able to do that, right? So like that was like really frustrating because like one of the whole things was like Arbitrum's not Ethereum aligned, like they're just maximalists, want to like make money and stuff, and it was like we're trying to like contribute back.
Very
like,
Ethereum aligned.
Like we literally just want to manage all of this, so like the Prism team can just focus on building a good client. So that was like frustrating, but again, it's politics. But like again, the point is like if we did that with shared sequencing, it would have been the same politics. Like no one, and I get it, like no one else is going to use a shared sequencing protocol like designed by Offchain Labs outside of the Arbitrum ecosystem, because that's like makes them look bad. Like, oh, you couldn't develop it yourself or something, right? So we're contributing to Espresso. Let's like Offchain Labs' vision is actually, I think, far beyond Arbitrum. Like that's a huge component of what we do. The overwhelming majority of my time is still focusing on the growth of Arbitrum technology, helping the public chains, etc. But yes, like I think you're going to start seeing Offchain Labs do more of these kind of things, where not that our focus is like, not that we're like distracted, but like we want to make impact. Like we want to contribute, and like we have such a good research team like across everything, and we can provide meaningful impact to like a lot of different projects in different ways. So we want to like explore and see what we can do.
Nice.
How many people are on the Offchain Labs team now?
Offchain Labs is about 90 people.
Okay, so it's scaled up pretty.
Yeah. So it's funny because like it's scaled in like weird ways. So like even after Arbitrum launched for like a year, we didn't have a single person in marketing. Like we didn't have a marketing department. Like
were you the closest thing to the marketing department? Like you and Steven?
Yeah.
Like you're just like
Hunter. Hunter was probably the closest thing. So he was a community manager.
Yeah.
He was probably the closest thing. But like we didn't have anyone like writing blog posts or like this or that, or like managing like branding strategy, like none of that. Now we have like a marketing team. So like the way things have scaled up has been interesting. So we have about probably 50 engineers, and then the rest is divided across like partnerships, marketing, product. Yeah, but like Prism's like an 11-person like only engineering team.
So yeah, it's like a pretty big chunk of your total employees.
Yeah, and we've got a really strong research team like across a lot of different things, right? So like scaling, consensus clients, ZK technology, which like sounds surprising, but like we're not like anti-ZK because we have an optimistic rollup. We just want to build like the best technology of the time. And like today we don't think ZK technology is the best, but like doesn't mean we're not researching how it might be the best in the future. So like we've got ZK expertise. Yeah, I mean it's like literally like a team of like 13 PhDs, and it's just like I'm by far the dumbest person on these conversations. And I love
You're just
that.
like,
it's just like, yeah, sure.
show me the
Like we have like, for example, like these things that are like really important. It's like we've got like Akaki, who's like a brilliant like game theory and economics on our team, and like when we think about questions like how often should we post batches to Ethereum, because it's like overhead and fixed costs. Like how do we optimize the posting relationship to maximize there's two different things. You post as frequently as you want, because then the more you post, the faster you have like Ethereum level security and finality. The less you post, if you post like once an hour, that means like Ethereum doesn't see those transactions for an hour. So that's bad, right? So like, what is the optimal strategy for that? It's like we have a person who like published a paper on like the optimal roll up strategy for maximizing the benefits and utility of like these two things. And like, these are really important questions for like the entire space to like understand.
And like without that, you'd be like, I don't know, 15 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is, right? It's like, let's just, I don't know. Yeah, sure. 15. Let's start with that. Let's start there. Exactly, right? And it's like,
That's how I would choose.
right, exactly, right? But so we're trying to like push the space forward on a lot of these like major research questions. Now, like a big one is like the internalization of MEV, right? Like when you have like sequencers. So if there's like arbitrage opportunities, it's the sequencer's first come, first serve. It's like whoever hits the sequencer first gets the opportunity, right? So the big winner in that is like AWS. Right, because it's like a million people like trying to hit a sequencer, like they're paying like compute bills with these bots and stuff, right? So how do we have a mechanism that like can internalize the latency wars, or like minimize latency wars, and like internalize the MEV into the protocol, right? So again, like all these like research questions that sort of have evolved with like L2 architecture are things that we're trying to sort of tackle and bring to the space.
Nice.
It makes sense. I mean, I feel like that was one of the things that drew me to investing in Offchain, was like talking to Ed, talking to Steven. It's like very, I feel like research driven culture, like from their backgrounds. It's like, oh, this is what they're good at. Like, this is what they know how to do. And like, you don't really see like somebody who's been successful for 30 years and other things like drop everything and be like, yeah, this is.
Yeah, Ed's a legend.
It's like a unicorn.
But at the same time though, like, and kudos to them, because like, like we have people like SizeChat on the team, and it's like such a cultural difference.
Yes.
But I think the theme is that like, you have to be best at like what you do, and you have to have the right resources across everything.
Yeah, and that's
like,
not just PhD research people,
yeah,
but it's also
not,
shit
right?
posters on Twitter.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it matters.
You guys probably remember like the phrase like Professor Coin from like 2016, and it's like,
Professor Coin.
remember those days when like, I don't know, was it Algorand that was called the Professor Coin?
No, I think it was Cardano, or like Cardano was the peer reviewed. Like it was like, oh, Hoskinson's PhD, and like this is all fucking peer reviewed.
Yeah,
like,
peer reviewed.
This is so bullish, dude.
Right. But like, you need more than that, right?
Oh no, then
like,
you realize like peer review is kind of bullshit, and like a lot of the
Not
stuff
that hard.
actually isn't reviewed, and like it's not replicatable, and it's just thrown out there because that's what their system incentivizes. Not shitting on Cardano, just like the academic system as a whole.
I mean, I don't know how Cardano, like, I know nothing about the project from a technical perspective, from a development perspective. It's like they must have like a lot of user mindshare, right?
You know what's crazy, and we should probably wrap up at some point because we're going on like 2.5 hours now.
Oh wow!
But I like to look at Reddit to kind of get like a vibe check of like what's going on, because I feel like we're in such an like insular bubble of like people who really, really live and breathe this stuff every day. It's their full-time jobs, where it's like, I don't think I have a very good bird's eye view of like, how does a more casual retail person think about crypto? And so I go to Reddit to like get an idea. Reddit loves Cardano. They're like,
love science,
so
dude. They fucking
they
love
hate
science.
Solana.
But, like,
they're
why?
like Solana, total scam. It's crazy this is here. Cardano's gonna flip it so soon. It's sad that projects with real like tech and applications, and I have no idea
But, like,
why.
why?
I have no idea.
There
Because
must
they're
be a
ignorant, because they're on Reddit. in
Like, no, there
2024.
must be a reason.
all the time.
though, right?
I think you're giving them way too much credit. But all the time, it's
I think
like,
you probably saw with the moon stuff.
yeah,
Right. But like, this goes back to like that whole question. It's like, when we talk about like Base, right, and like the value prop of like Base and Coinbase's relationship, it's like, it's a really interesting. Like, what percentage of people use Coinbase know that like there's blockchains that underneath these tokens?
25%,
You think it's that high? I don't know.
I think
Maybe
it's
less.
probably lower.
10. You think it's lower than 10?
I think probably.
Well, let me ask you a
I
question.
think maybe
Let me
probably
ask- let me
more
ask you a
people
question.
think that
This-
all are just like Bitcoin but different.
So let me ask you a question. How long was the gap between the first time you bought crypto on a centralized exchange and when you withdrew it to a centralized, like, to a self-custodial wallet?
Within 2 weeks.
So that's, I think, a very rare
So
trade.
I had a
Right?
very like unique experience where
I was 4 or 5 years.
I bought Litecoin on Coinbase. It's the first thing I ever bought, and immediately I was
Charlie Lee.
it was just because it was
show.
cheap. It was like under $100. Bitcoin is over a couple of thousand. It's like, well, this is like silver to gold. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, of course this makes sense.
Right.
So I bought that. And then very quickly I learned that like as a US citizen, I was going to have to make a frequent day trip to my favorite Caribbean island to access any type of exchange. So, you know, Binance was a favorite. We end up on a VPN. We're throwing the Litecoin over to Binance. Like, I didn't know what I was doing.
No, but when you threw it to Binance, was just another centralized exchange. But when did you first withdraw it to like a MetaMask wallet?
It's IDEX. Like, it was like around the same time. There was
Okay.
IDEX was like the first
Yeah.
DEX, or like the
It
first
was
DEX.
like them, like Ether Delta, Fork
Yeah.
Delta, all that kind of
There
stuff.
was like some like, yeah, and there was some shit coin that like somebody I followed was talking about. There was like 100K market cap, and it was on IDEX. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take an E.
So that's impressive. Like my journey was 4 years.
But
probably
so I should
between
say, like,
buying.
after that happened, I didn't use the chain until 2020. So like, I put some in IDEX, lost it, and then like I didn't. When I was dollar cost averaging, I was leaving it all on the exchange. I wasn't like moving it into my wallet. And then in 2020, Uniswap came out, and it was like, oh shit, like
This is easy.
we should be taking all of our money and putting in Uniswap. And I was like, okay, I can't lose all of it. So I just made a new wallet, sent 2 ETH to it, and then I was on chain
Right.
completely like.
So I was like so not on chain to the point where this is funny. I've never even claimed my Tezos ICO.
Yeah. you still have it?
I don't know. I've never claimed it. I don't even know how to access it. I've just never claimed it. I was like so off chain that like that wasn't even like my user experience. I should figure out how to get it, but
I'm sure it's worth something.
it's got to be worth something, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
We have a question we ask everybody. I don't know if you know it, but it is, if you had to write an autobiography and title it, what would the title of your autobiography be?
How long do I have? Give me a few seconds.
Oh, you got as much time as
Let
you
me
want.
think about this. You
Just
guys-
imagine like the Jeopardy music's playing, or like
Dude.
Squirtle sax.
This was great because I had several questions for you about L3 stuff, strictly for work,
Right.
that I was able to just talk to you about in a podcast instead. Where
Nice.
it's like I've been thinking, oh, what if IKB was an L3 on Arbitrum, kind of like what Zai's getting up to.
And how would
I
we
just-
get USDC on that network?
Yeah, we hit all the questions, but it was easy. It was actually just podcast questions.
Okay, so this is kind of a cheat because it's not my
It was only good answers.
it's not my line,
Uh-huh.
but I've internalized it. I think. Doing things that don't scale.
Nice.
Little Paul Graham action.
Yeah, exactly.
Andy, I'm surprised you knew this podcast.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of been like I would say like my life story
Nice.
of like, just trying like again, like calling a sports editor, like it doesn't work usually. You know what I mean? It doesn't
No.
scale as like an opportunity. It's like, but I pushed like my first job, like, again, I know we're almost over, but like, I like my grandfather had like a jewelry store business, and like at 11 years old, like I used to like what I did was, and this is like I don't know if this is manipulative or not, but it's kind of smart. It's kind of manipulative, but like I used to like look through his books and see like where his cost margins for like his product was like below market price, and then I'd like take those goods to him and be like, if I sell these, can we like sell them for less than market so I can get like, meaning basically like give you your margin and like make more money,
Yes.
right? And like
You're selling these under market price. We can get more money.
exactly, but like
I can just take the extra money.
exactly. So like I was like, yeah, like I would like I started like 12, and like by 15 I was like on the streets of Toronto, like going to like different jewelry stores trying to like sell like underpriced goods in a place where like everybody got like happy because they were buying for inventory. He got their margin and I got my commissions. But yeah, like that's like the kind of thing that like doesn't really scale. And I think
Not
like,
a lot of people are doing that at the ages 12 to 15. I'll tell
but
you
like that's always been like my thing. Like I think like with Arbitrum, like it was a very similar mentality. It's like we're never gonna be able to scale like sitting and working with projects that like might fizzle out in a day. But like let's give everyone a chance. And like I don't know, that's probably like I would say how I approach things.
that. I like that.
Yeah, me too.
This has been a great conversation. We went pretty wide, pretty deep. Think it'll be great when people listen back. Hopefully they get a big perspective of, you know, not only how Arbitrum sits in the giant scaling ecosystem, but just like you and the builders behind it. Because I think there's like a lot of the story that doesn't get told on the Twitter Spaces and all the Twitter threads and all that stuff. So thank you for coming and hanging out with us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having
Thank
me.
you.
And
This was fun.
yeah, this was awesome. And let's chat about that stuff
Yeah.
offline.
Definitely.